Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Abby and I like to talk about spooky things. Today's video is going to be part 2 of reading and discussing the recently released Idaho 4 documents. Wearing the same thing as last time. I literally just finished filming that video and am now filming the remainder of this. If you haven't seen part 1, go ahead and check that out first. In there I discussed documents 1 through 100, and today we will be discussing 101 through 314. In the previous video, it was a lot of the introduction of police getting to the scene, how they saw the scene, autopsies, statements of witnesses, and now we are about to be getting into essentially nailing the suspect, who I will only be referring to as either BK or Inmate 163214. Like I said in the last video, I will not tolerate any negative comments toward the roommates, about the victims, or the victims' families. That is absolutely not acceptable here. So any comments should be, informative, polite, no negativity. Like, absolutely not. As always, if you guys like this video, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up. Click the subscribe button down below and turn on post notifications so you never miss a video. I post every Sunday and most Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 4 p.m. Central Time. Without further ado, let's get right on into the video. Moscow Police Department Brett Payne. At approximately 1400 hours on 1/6/2023, assisted by members of the Idaho State Police and the FBI, additional evidence items were collected from 1122 King Road. The above items were collected and transported to the Moscow Police Department and booked into evidence. Item 437, nightstand. Item 438, pink comforter. Item 439, blue blanket. Item 440, pillows. Item 441, mattress. Item 442, bed frame. Item 443, mattress. Item 444, bed frame. Item 445, pillows. Item 446, sheet. Item 447, nightstand. Item 448, pillows. Moscow Police Department, Danny Vargas. Release of Dylan Mortensen's personal items. On January 4th, 2023, at approximately 10:30 hours, I released the remainder of Dylan Mortensen's personal property to blank, LR. R signed for the items, signed release attached electronically to the case file. On January 5th, 2023, I learned from Bill Thompson, per the recent signed court order to hold all evidence, Dylan's items fell under that order. Thompson stated his office would contact Dylan and make arrangements to have Dylan's items returned to Moscow Police Department. Thompson stated his office would contact L and make arrangements to have Dylan's items returned to Moscow Police Department. On January 6, 2023, Sergeant Blaker traveled to Boise, Idaho and picked up Dylan's personal belongings from LR and transported them back to MPD. On January 9, 2023, I assisted Sergeant Blaker with unloading Dylan's items from his vehicle back into Moscow Police Department secured storage garage at the City of Moscow shop. I can't imagine how frustrating that would be to finally get your stuff back after all that time. I mean, stuff is just stuff, but it's like, after all that, she's been without her stuff that she would use on a daily basis, probably her comfort things. She finally gets it back just to be told that she can't have it anymore. Obviously things happen, mistakes are made, but it's always unfortunate when mistakes are made. On December 30th, 2022, at approximately 06:30 hours, I stood by while a search warrant was served at blank, the residence of BK. While on scene, one of the neighbors, AA, who lived in the same building, stated her husband returned home and he might have additional information to add regarding B. A had been interviewed earlier in the day by several FBI agents prior to F returning home. Detective Mowry and I met with A and FA in their apartment. I recorded the conversation with my phone and informed F and A I would be recording our conversation, which they were fine with. A said she had been speaking with F about the questions she was asked. One question being if she had ever seen BK with anyone else. F told me they did remember a time when they returned home and they saw BK sitting on the stairs leading up to his apartment next to a male. F and A described the male as having light brown skin, a sleeve tattoo on his left arm, wearing a sleeveless shirt and shorts. F said the male was riding a dark color blue or black Harley type motorcycle. F said the motorcycle was not a sport bike and was very loud. F said he and A both noticed BK and the male talking, but as they got closer, both BK and the male stopped talking and looked at them. A said BK acknowledged them and asked how it was going. A said it seemed as if BK was acting overly nice. A and F said when they walked away to their apartment, BK and the male were still silent and did not continue their conversation. F said he saw the male get up and heard the motorcycle start, but did not see him drive off. F and A said this was the only time they ever saw this person or saw or heard the motorcycle. F and A said BK seemed like a quiet person and they remembered meeting BK's dad when BK moved in. F said BK's dad was very talkative. F and A said BK's car was always clean and neat even on rainy days. A said BK would often park his car right in front of their bedroom window and they would notice the headlights when he came and went. F and A did not notice when and if BK changed the plates on his vehicle. F looked through his phone and thought on the night of the murders he probably went to bed at midnight. F did not remember seeing the lights from BK's car or knowing if BK was home or not. F mentioned on another occasion seeing BK return home around 0100 hours and said he was wearing dark clothing. He had on a dark-colored backpack, and when they said hi to him, he seemed pretty short with them. F did not remember what day this occurred, but he said it was not the night of the murders. A said that she worked late hours and often would also see BK returning home around the same time she would, around 0100 and 0200 hours. We thanked F and A for their time and told them to contact us if they remembered anything else. Our conversation with F and A was recorded and is booked on a DVD into MPD evidence. On November 23, 2022, at approximately 20:39 hours, MM came to the Moscow Police Department to be interviewed about her presence in the area of 1122 King Road during the early morning hours of November 13, 2022. M was identified as being in the area through records obtained from DoorDash via a search warrant and was confirmed as being in the area based off of a Google geofence warrant, which was obtained as a result of the investigation. I was accompanied by FBI Special Agent Alex Skelton during this interview. M told me she worked for 12 to 18 hours on the night November 12 to 13 and received 3 orders in the King Road/Queen Road area. 2 of the orders were at blank Queen Road apartment complex, which is immediately to the east of 1122 King Road. M said the delivery at 1122 King Road was her final order for the evening. M said she could not find 1122 King Road address as the address number was hidden by the porch light, which caused her to remain in the area for approximately 15 minutes. M also stated her Google Maps told her to go to the parking lot immediately behind 1122 King Road. Real quick, my thoughts reading this. Obviously, we don't know, and we may never know, who the real target was, but it's assumed that Maddie and Kaylee were the targets, and also assumed that Xana and Ethan were not intended targets and potentially only became victims because Xana ran into BK in the hallway. Again, we don't know if this is true. We may never know. Xana could have been a target and just so happened to run into him on his way to her. We don't know. But if it is the case that he happened to run into her on his way out and that's why he attacked her and then Ethan, my mind immediately goes to the fact that the DoorDash driver took an extra 15 minutes to drop off the food because she couldn't find the address. Had she dropped off the food sooner, had she been able to find the address and dropped it off 15 minutes earlier, Xana might have already dropped off the DoorDash bag in the kitchen counter and returned to her room 15 minutes earlier and not come across him, and she might still be here. That is my first thought reading that. And it makes me think of how crazy just a short amount of time can affect so many things. M stated she initially parked in the front of 1122 King Road and could see a female in the top left window, the 3rd-story bathroom. M said she saw the same female a couple more times in the same window and she would duck down when M looked at her. M then said she drove to the back parking lot behind 1122 King Road and parked. She stated she could see the back courtyard area behind the house and noticed all the lights were on. M stated her map told her to walk into the back of the house, but she did not feel comfortable doing so because there was no path. M said she started to walk down the road, which runs north-south immediately to the east of the residence. M stated a tan sedan drove next to her while she was walking. M said there was one male driver and noticed he did not look at me. She said he looked completely zoned and just drove past her. M later stated the driver was white with blonde or red spiky hair. M also noticed the dome light in the car was on when it went by and later told me the male was wearing a light colored collared shirt. M stated she walked back up to her car and drove back to the front of 1122 King Road, at which point she saw the address numbers. M said she placed the order at the front door, took a picture, and then left at approximately 0400 hours. During the time M was in the area of the King Road residence, the white Elantra can be seen via the blank King Road camera, driving back and forth on Walenta Drive, and then enter the King Road/Queen Road loop at approximately 0356 hours. At the point M pulled into the front parking lot before she dropped the order off, the white Elantra pulled in behind M vehicle, a gray Subaru Forester, and then exited the King Road at approximately 0358 hours. M did not mention seeing the white Elantra behind her at any time. I continued to question M about her time near the residence. She told me she walked down Queen Road at one point with her flashlight out. M can be seen doing so on the footage from blank King Road. M also continued to tell me the female she saw in the upstairs bathroom window would duck down when M looked at her. M described her as having long brown hair. M stated she could not identify the girl as one of the victims. Approximately 30 minutes into the interview, Special Agent Skelton requested M take part in a cognitive interview. M agreed, and Special Agent Skelton began the cognitive interview. During this interview, M confirmed much of the information she had already told us. M was able to remember she had her dog with her during the time of her walks in the area, but did not clarify much more in the ways of the details of the evening. We thanked M for her cooperation, offered any support she may need, and concluded our interview. Subsequent investigation of video footage and cellular data showed the tan sedan M saw was likely a light-colored SUV which left the area. Moreover, it does not appear M saw the white Elantra at any point during her time near the residence. Moscow Police Department, Lawrence Maury. On December 29, 2022, based on the above information, the Latah County Court signed an order finding probable cause for the criminal complaint charging burglary, Idaho Code 18-1401, 1403, and 4 counts of murder in the first degree. Idaho Code 18-4001, 4002, 4003, 4004, all felonies. A warrant of arrest was issued for BCK. So I'm just realizing how similar his initials are to BTK, who, coincidentally, one of his old professors interviewed and helped write a book. Really weird. On December 29th, 2022, BK was arrested at his family's home, blank in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. That same day, a Pennsylvania magistrate signed a search warrant for the residence, which included BK's cell phone. His cell phone was taken into evidence as part of the search warrant. His cell phone device is currently in evidence at the FBI, Philadelphia Regional Computer Forensic Laboratory, located at blank. The phone data was being extracted by FBI SSA Jeffrey Tanzola, subsequent to the warrant being served. On January 9, 2023, I received a hard drive from SSA Tanzola, which contains a copy of the data extracted from the phone belonging to BK. The data is saved on a Seagate 2TB external USB hard drive with serial number blank, and is labeled as Philadelphia RCFL evidence number 000-43447. I applied for and was granted a warrant seeking the evidence from the hard drive provided by Pennsylvania, which contains a forensic image of BK's phone, which was stored in the secured computer forensic lab at the Moscow Police Department. At 15:50 hours on January 9, 2023, I served the warrant on the hard drive located in the forensics lab. Pursuant to the warrant, I downloaded the file to the forensic computers located in the secure forensic computer lab at the Moscow Police Department. I completed the warrant return receipt and affidavit. These documents were sent to the Latah County Prosecutor's Office to be returned to the court. I also left a copy of the receipt and warrant with the drive, which was placed back into evidence. I began examining the data for any accounts linked to the phone and BK with other electronic service providers such as Facebook, Snapchat, etc. I located the following installed applications, website history, screenshots, and usernames/passwords associated with an electronic service provider: Yik Yak, LinkedIn, Reddit, Twitter, Tinder, Dropbox, Washington Trust Bank, PayPal, YouTube, TikTok/Musical.ly, Amazon, Visa Prepaid Processing.com, When2Meet, Activision, GroupMe, NetTeller, Hulu, Instagram, Facebook, PSECU, Spotify, Booking.com, Travelocity, Strava, NordVPN. These electronic service providers may be storing data relevant to the investigation which may have been deleted from the device. I'll be requesting assistance from the Latah County Prosecutor's Office to apply for warrants for these companies for any data from accounts related to the following identifiers located in the phone data. And we have blocked out emails, but they are blank@gmail.com, blank@gmail.com, blank@desales.edu. I will complete a complete examination of the data at my earliest convenience. Moscow Police Department, Brett Payne. On November 13, 2022, at approximately 13:49 hours, I interviewed Emily Allen at the Moscow Police Department referencing the quadruple homicides at 1122 King Road. I asked Allen what her relationship to the victims was. She told me Kernodle was her best friend and the others were all her close friends as well. After I collected her information, I asked Allen to tell me about her day, November 12, 2022. Allen stated she left the football game and then went to see her friends at an apartment near hers, blank Taylor Avenue. Allen stated she arrived at her apartment at approximately 20-30 hours. Allen stated she, Jay, Hunter Johnson, and Elle all went to sleep the early evening of November 12, 2022. Allen stated they planned to go to the blank lodge party but did not end up going. Allen stated she and Hunter woke up at approximately 0100 hours and then stayed up watching TV until approximately 0300 hours, at which point they went back to sleep. Allen stated she woke up approximately 10:30 hours on November 13, 2022. Allen stated Mortensen called her at approximately 11:51 hours that morning and said last night around 4 a.m. she heard and saw a man and she and Bethany were locked in their room sleeping, and added she wanted Allen to come over to check the house because she was too scared. Allen also said Mortensen heard Gonzalez scream and run up the stairs. A while later, Mortensen came out of her room and saw a man staring at her. Allen stated the man didn't do anything to Mortensen. Mortensen said she stayed locked in her room and heard the side door close, so she ran to Bethany's room. I asked Allen if she asked Mortensen why she didn't call anyone that night. Allen stated Mortensen told her it was because she was intoxicated and didn't want to believe what was going on. Mortensen also told Allen the man was wearing a mask and she could only see his eyes and nose. Allen stated Johnson went over to the house just before her. When Allen arrived, she stated she went upstairs but was stopped by Johnson, who told Allen she didn't want to see it. Allen went back outside and officers responded. I asked Allen if anything seemed out of the ordinary from what she saw. She told me there was a large party at the house on Friday, November 11, 2022. Allen stated the house was a mess due to the party. Allen also told me she saw a knife laying on the floor at the top of the stairs when she went inside. Allen described the knife as a steak knife. It was later determined Johnson grabbed the knife when he entered the house. Allen stated she remained outside after she walked out of the residence until law enforcement arrived. She also stated that she then came to the police department to be interviewed. I asked Allen if she knew who would commit the murders. Allen stated she did not know. Allen added she and Kernodle were no longer blank sorority members. I asked her if there had been any stalking behavior or recent suspicious circumstances. Allen stated there had not been anything she could remember. She also stated there were no other conflicts with other victims she knew of. I concluded my interview with Allen after collecting the information about her cell phone. Moscow Police Department, Dustin Blaker. This says on November 11, 2022, which is obviously a mistype because that was before the event took place. So I don't know exactly what day this was. It might have been the 13th, could have been after, I don't know. But as it says, November 11, 2022, at around 14:27 hours, I conducted an interview on JL at the Moscow Police Department. Jay told me she lives at blank Taylor Avenue. These apartments are referred to as the Whites. Jay stated she went to 1122 King Road in the afternoon of 11/12/22 and was hanging out with Xana. Jay stated they all went to the Whites at around 1300 hours for different parties in the apartment complex. Ethan left to go to his sister's formal, but Jay was not sure what time that was at. Jay felt she got to Xana's house at around 12:30 on 11/12/2022. Jay stated she saw Xana, Ethan, Dylan, Bethany, Haley, Maddie, C, L, L, and E. Jay told me she last saw Xana and Ethan around 1500 hours, but was not sure. Jay told me she got a text from Ethan asking for the Snapchat for CG, but she never sent it to him. Jay did not know why Ethan wanted this information and states as far as she knew they did not have issues with each other. Jay then told me that she had heard from others that Kaylee had seen some random guy behind the house when she took Murphy out to go pee. Jay also heard of an incident where some random guy followed Kaylee around Winco and followed her out of the store, and she thought he tried to get into her car. Jay was not for sure who she heard this from, but either Bethany or Dylan could tell us more. Jay told me she knows Xana and Ethan do like to use Adderall when they drink, but they did not know who they got it from or if they took any on 11/12/2022. Jay was not able to tell me anything else related to the cases. Moscow Police Department, Brett Payne. On January 6, 2023, I went back to 1122 King Road with several members of the Idaho State Police and the FBI in order to collect several pieces of evidence at the request of the defense counsel in this case. Once on the scene, we collected the mattress, bed frame, and nightstand, pillows, and blankets from Cronulla's room. We also collected the mattress, bed frames, ×2 folding frames, nightstand, pillows, and shelf from the east wall of Logan's room. The items were wrapped and transported separately back to the Moscow Police Department, where they were placed on opposite sides of the Moscow Police Department evidence bay. I completed the evidence involvement for each item, and they were secured in the bay. On November 13, 2022, at approximately 14:20 hours, I interviewed MC, Ethan's sister, at the Moscow Police Department referencing the quadruple homicide at 1122 King Road. M is Ethan Chapin's sister. M consented to a forensic search of her phone, and I collected it from her. I asked M to tell me what her day looked like on November 12, 2022. M stated she had her blank formal at the night of November 12, 2022. M stated she did not do much prior to the formal, and then went to Hunga Dunga for the event at approximately 1900 hours. M said she, HC, their brother, and Ethan Chapin left the formal with several other friends at approximately 2000 hours. M stated she was dropped off at her house as the group was planning to go to the Blank Lodge party. However, M stated she did not go and remained in her sorority until H called her the morning of November 13, 2022 at approximately 12:30 hours. M stated H told her to come to Xana's, 1122 King Road, when he called her. M said that H did not elaborate on why she needed to come to the house. M stated Hunter Johnson, HC, Emily Allen, J, unknown last, Funkel, and Mortensen were all there when she arrived. M said someone told her when she got there that someone was in the house and Ethan and Xana didn't make it. M told me Ethan, Xana, and H had been texting her the night prior asking her to come to the blank. M said she saw the text once she woke up the morning of November 13, 2022. M stated she did not go into the house that morning. M could not think of anyone who or any reason why someone would commit the homicides. I concluded my interview with M and advised her to reach out if she needed resources Moscow Police Department could provide. November 14, 2022, at around 17:10 hours, I contacted EG in the front lobby of the police department. G had contacted Moscow Police Department earlier in the day and stated he was a local Uber driver and he gave Kaylee and Maddie a ride home on 11/13/2022 from the downtown area. G had been in the Spokane Coeur d'Alene area when he contacted us and stated he would not be back until 1700 hours. I asked G how he knew Kaylee and Maddie. G stated he drives for Uber and Lyft, and Kaylee and Maddie have become some of his regular customers, and this is how he met them. G stated he was contacted by Kaylee on 11/12/2022 at around 22:02 hours and asked if he could pick her and some friends up at 1122 King Road and take them to the Corner Club. G arrived at the address at 20:15 hours and picked up Kaylee, Maddie, and one other female. G stated at 01:45 hours on 11/13/2022 he was contacted by Kaylee again and asked if he could pick her and some friends up at the grub truck. G arrived at the grub truck at around 01:49 hours. G took Kaylee and Maddie home. He stated it was a 3 to 4 minute drive from the grub truck to 1122 King Road. G told me he has been driving for Uber and Lyft since 2019. G told me Kaylee has been a regular for at least the last year. G stated he was working, but Kaylee did not contract him through the Uber or Lyft app, but instead texted him directly both times. G stated when he got to the grub truck, he parked in front of the grub truck on Main Street facing south. G texted Kaylee he was there, and she stated they would be there in a second. She said they were at order 75 and theirs was 78. Kaylee and Maddie came to the vehicle a short time later. Kaylee was in the front passenger seat and Maddie was in the rear seat. Maddie was eating the food from the grub truck with her hands. They all had a casual conversation. G stated they appeared to be fine and nothing appeared to be out of the ordinary. G stated he still had the text on his phone and sent the screenshots to me. I burned those screenshots to a DVD and booked it into the property at a later time along with other documents I had related to this case. G was not able to give me more information at this time. On November 13, 2022, at approximately 14:37 hours, I interviewed JD, Kaylee's ex-boyfriend, at the Moscow Police Department reference the quadruple homicides which occurred at 1122 King Road. D was the ex-boyfriend of Kaylee. D consented to have his phone forensically searched and provide me with his cell phone at the beginning of the interview. I asked D to tell me about his day on November 12, 2022. D stated he worked at blank and worked from 1400 hours to 2210 hours on November 12, 2022. D stated he left his work and dropped off some food for a friend working at the Corner Club. D stated he went home, blank King Road, then returned to the Corner Club at around 2300 hours. D stated he saw Gonzalez at the Corner Club and spoke to her briefly. D stated he left the Corner Club but was unsure if Gonzalez left before or after him. D stated he went to bed when he got home. When D awoke, he told me he saw a commotion down the street. 1122 King Road is visible from blank King Road. D stated he later looked at his phone and saw several missed calls from Gonzalez and Mogan from the early morning hours of November 13, 2022. I clarified D's timeline for the night prior. He told me he left the Corner Club at approximately 0100 hours and returned home. D said he got a ride from PR, the blank of blank fraternity. He told me he thought he went to sleep at approximately 0130 hours and awoke at approximately 1130 hours on November 13, 2022. I asked D to tell me what the commotion was he mentioned. D told me he saw law enforcement and emergency vehicles in front of 1122 King Road, so we walked over to see what was happening. I asked D to clarify the missed calls he received early that morning. D told me he received multiple calls from Gonzalez and Mogan, one of which was FaceTime, between 0240 and 0300 hours. D stated he knew Mogan for some time, but she would not call him for any reason. D also stated Gonzalez texted him to tell him he could come to her house to retrieve his vape pen. I asked D if he noticed or heard anything suspicious anytime recently. D stated he saw a dark gold minivan backing up King Road approximately 1 to 2 months prior. D stated he did not remember any other suspicious circumstances. D did add Gonzalez would call him on any occasion when she was walking home alone or when she was feeling sketched out. D stated there were people coming in and out of 1122 King Road frequently and more people knew the code to their door than they should have. D stated he was not sure if the residents regularly locked the rear sliding door. D also told me he and Gonzalez owned a dog, a golden doodle named Murphy. He also told me Gonzalez was taking the dog out sometime in the past when Gonzalez saw a shadowy figure behind the house. D stated nothing else came of the incident. I asked D about his relationship with Gonzalez. He told me they had dated for approximately 5 years and broke up several months prior due to a loss of spark, coupled with Gonzalez leaving for a job in Texas. D stated there wasn't conflict and their breakup was mutual. I asked D if there was anyone who flirted with Gonzalez. D stated there was a male by the name of ER who often flirted with Gonzalez. D did not know of any past stalking incidents, nor did he know who would have committed the murders. I asked D about his conversations with Gonzalez at the Corner Club. He said the conversation was short but normal. D did not have any further information for me during this interview, so I concluded my interview with D. On January 6, 2023, at around 0710 hours, I retrieved evidence from the Moscow Police Department Tech, TS. I signed for the items and transported them to the Idaho State Police Forensic Lab in Meridian, Ohio. Once I arrived in Meridian, I transferred the items from Moscow Police Department to the Idaho State Police Intake Receptionist. All items were signed for chain of custody. I was then given several items, the lab tested, and were able to be returned to Moscow Police Department for storage. I signed for all items and completed the chain of custody paperwork on the bags. Prior to coming back to Moscow, I stopped at Dylan Mortenson's residence in Boise to retrieve the personal items which had been released to her blank earlier in the week by accident. I packed these belongings into my vehicle and I returned to Moscow. Once back in Moscow, I booked all the evidence from the state lab back into property. I left Dylan's personal items locked in the vehicle I was driving, and on 1/9/2023, I transported these items to the city shop and I placed them in a secure garage. One item of note is that at the time the items were being loaded into the vehicle I was driving, a Ford Fusion, we were able to get everything into the vehicle except a small table. We attempted several times to get the table into the vehicle, but it was not going to fit. Dee stated they did not care if the table was returned, so she had her husband break the table and place it in the vehicle. On 1/10/23, I told Ann Taylor, defense counsel for the suspect, about why and who broke the table. On January 10, 2023, at around 13:15 hours, I met with Ann Taylor and her team at the Moscow Police Department. Taylor is the defense attorney for BK. Taylor had arranged to go through the garbage sent to us from Pennsylvania by the FBI investigators. Items from Madison's room and Xana's room, 2 vehicles belonging to Ethan Chapin, and personal items belonging to Ethan, Dylan, and Bethany. After looking at the garbage, Taylor identified several items she felt we could discard since they contained perishable goods and they had started to spoil. We placed these items on a shelf located in the northeast corner of the storage garage at the police department. Taylor also identified several items she wanted us to keep until she saw reports of these items. Taylor was good with where we were keeping the mattresses, bed frames, nightstands, shelf, and sheets from Madison's room and Xana's room. I escorted Taylor and her team to the city shop, and they went through the personal items removed from 1122 King Road weeks earlier. These items belonged to Bethany, Dylan, and Ethan. When Taylor was done, she identified several items she wanted Moscow Police Department to hold, and she was going to request an order from the judge to take these items and have them tested. These items were placed in cardboard boxes and placed away from the other items so they would not accidentally be released. Taylor and her team looked at both vehicles while at the shop. Taylor stated she would contact Bill Thompson's office and would advise him when she felt the items could be released. Moscow Police Department, name KP. On Wednesday, December 7, 2022, at approximately 10 a.m., I accompanied Moscow Police Department's command staff and Detective Vargas, as well as Mike Mooney of the Idaho State Police, to 1122 King Road, Moscow, Idaho. In the entryway of the residence at 1122 King Road, I put on PPEs to include shoe covers and black latex gloves. My activities inside the residence included: place the personal belongings of Bethany Funkel bedroom into boxes. This bedroom is located on the first floor east side. Captain Roger Lanier and Detective Vargas assisted with this task. Place the personal belongings of Dylan Mortenson's bedroom into boxes. This bedroom is located on the second floor east side. Detective Vargas assisted with this task. Place the items located on the first floor west side bedroom into boxes and/or stacked by the door to be loaded. Captain Lanier and Detective Vargas assisted with this task. After packing the bedrooms, I moved taped boxes from the second floor living room area to the top floor of the stairway to be passed down the stairs and loaded into the U-Haul truck. After completion of these tasks, I removed my gloves and shoe covers and left the residence. After riding with Captain Barrett and Detective Vargas to the city shop's secure garage, I helped unload items from the truck and stack boxes according to the names on the boxes. The command staff and Detective Vargas assisted with this task. Moscow Police Department, Tyson Barrett. On 12/14/2022, KL asked me if there was a way to ensure the personal text messages and photos shared between her and Maddie would not be deleted or lost off of Madison's phone. I told her I would check with our forensic detective. On 12/15/2022, I talked with Detective Mowry about saving messages and photos on Madison's phone that were between her and her mother. Detective Mowry said he could save the information separately on a disk. He then suggested providing the disk to Mogan's mother. I then spoke with a Latah County prosecutor, and he said I could release the disk to her. On 12/19/2022, I mailed the disk. On 12/20/2022, she contacted me and said she received the disk. Moscow Police Department, Brett Payne. On 1/18/2023, I spoke to KA, EA, reference to a suspicious occurrence she and E remembered at 1122 King Road. I called Kay and asked her what she remembered. Kay told me she came to Moscow to celebrate E's birthday on blank 2022. Kaylee Gonzalez had planned a party for E at 1122 King Road that evening. Kay stated several people, to include Gonzalez and E, were on the back patio during the party. Gonzalez's dog, Murphy, was also present. Kay stated that Murphy ran into the bushes behind a house on several occasions and would not return when called. Kay stated they called Murphy numerous times before he would come back. Kay told me the group eventually went inside and shut the door. This was the only occurrence Kay was present, but told me E remembered more similar occasions. I called E on 1/19/2023, referenced these occurrences. E also related the occasion on her birthday and added it was unlike Murphy to not immediately return home when called, which is the reason she and Gonzalez were concerned about someone being behind the house when Murphy would behave in this manner. E told me about another occasion on 10/29/2022, during which she was 1122 King Road for a Halloween party. E told me Mogan, Gonzalez, Kernodle, and Chapin were all present at the party. During the party, E stated the group gathered on the back patio once again, and Murphy began to run into the wood line behind the house and not come back. E told me they heard noises too. She described these noises as similar to what it would sound like if someone was moving through the woods on foot. This occasion took place midday, and they did not see anyone behind the house. However, Murphy's behaviors and the noises caused them to go inside and close the door. The last occasion E remembered took place approximately 2 weeks prior to the homicide. E was unsure of the date. E stated Murphy displayed similar behavior of running into the woods and not coming back when called. E also recalled an occurrence during the same time frame, exact date unknown, wherein she and Gonzalez returned to 1122 King Road and found the rear sliding door standing open and Murphy was missing. E stated they had to go out and look for Murphy after they found the door was open. I asked E if it was common for people who didn't live at 1122 King Road to walk in when no one was home. E stated it was not uncommon and added members of blank and several friends of the females who lived there would come and go at will. I thanked E for her time and concluded our interview after advising her to call me if she remembered anything new. I guess one thing to note about this is I believe it was in Bethany's interview she mentioned that Murphy always had to be on a leash because he would run away. So it is interesting the two different takes on this. I feel like Bethany would probably know better because she lived there and lived with Murphy. But also it is interesting that this person thought it was so weird. And also in that instance, I wonder if maybe Murphy did sense someone. I just think it's interesting the two different perspectives on how Murphy normally acts. Moscow Police Department, Tyson Barrett. On 11/13/2022 at around 1200 hours, I received a phone call from Sergeant Gunderson informing me his team responded to a call at 1122 King Road where they found 4 deceased college-age individuals inside the residence. He said it was apparent they had all been murdered. Sergeant Gunderson said they did not know the location or identity of the suspect. Sergeant Gunderson said his team had cleared the residence and secured the scene. He said they identified a group of college-age individuals outside the residence and had started interviewing them. I called Chief Fry, Captain Lanier, and Captain Dallinger to let them know about the homicide. I called Detective Sergeant Lawrence, told him about the homicide, and asked him to call in detectives. Sergeant Lawrence said he would call in Sergeant Blaker and Corporal Payne to assist as well, because they were slated to rotate into detectives soon. Sergeant Lawrence said he was also calling the Idaho State Police to ask the Region 2 detectives to process the crime scene. I called BE, U of I Dean of Students, and BL with U of I Office of Public Safety and Security to inform them of the homicide because the residence was near the U of I campus and the victims appeared to be college students. When I arrived on scene, I met with Sergeant Gunderson and Sergeant Lawrence on the street in front of the residence. We briefly discussed the scene, and I was given the names of the 4 individuals who were killed: Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, Madison Mogan, and Kaylee Gonzalez. I was also told 2 of the witnesses outside, Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funkel, were roommates, and they were apparently inside the residence when the incident occurred. Sergeant Gunderson told me a dog was taken out of Kaylee Gonzalez's room and transported to the Humane Society for safekeeping. He told me it didn't appear the dog had gone into the rooms where the murders were committed because it didn't have any visible blood on its body. I contacted U of I Dean E, gave him the victims' names, and asked if he could verify if they were students. He contacted me later and confirmed all 4 were students, but didn't have any emergency contact information for them other than their permanent addresses. At 13:04, the University of Idaho sent out a vandal alert via text message regarding the homicide. At about 13:30 hours, we moved the witnesses, who I believed were students, that patrol identified on King Road to the Moscow Police Department training room. I met with Sergeant Lawrence, Sergeant Blaker, and Corporal Payne and Detective Mowry and asked them to start interviewing each person. I also met with CF, U of I Associate Dean of Students, at the police department. I talked to her earlier about having the students come to the police department to be interviewed. F had an assistant there with her, and they were there to comfort the students and be a resource if necessary. While I was in the training room, I was told 2 of the witnesses were Ethan Chapin's siblings, M and H. They told me their parents had been informed of Ethan's death and they were on their way to Moscow. I asked Sergeant Lawrence to arrange death notifications for Kaylee Gonzalez and Madison Mogan's parents. He later informed me a Kootenai deputy went to the Gonzalez home to notify them of Kaylee's death and they had already been made aware. Captain Dallinger told me he met Xander Kernodle's father, Jay, on scene. Captain Dallinger said he asked Jay to meet him at the police department where he informed him of Xana's death. Sergeant Lawrence said a Corey Delane officer went to S and K L's house to notify them of Madison Mogan's death. Kay is Madison Mogan's mother. Sergeant Lawrence was informed that they had been informed and were already on their way to Moscow. When they arrived at the police department, I did the death notification and asked Sergeant Lawrence to interview them. At around 14:15 hours, I met with President SG and his staff in his office on campus. I told him about the homicide and the suspect's location identity remained unknown. I returned to the police department and JD approached me asking if I could release the dog Murphy to him. He said he and Kaylee Gonzalez both own the dog. At that point, I was busy working with detectives and administration and didn't release the dog. I talked with Corporal Payne, who interviewed JD. He said D had been in a relationship with Kaylee Gonzalez, indicating they broke up a few months ago. Corporal Payne said D told him he and Gonzalez remained friends after the breakup. I asked about the dog that had been removed from the residence and taken to the animal shelter. Corporal Payne said Dee told him that he and Kaylee both owned the dog. Later that afternoon, Dee approached me again and asked if I could release the dog to him. I called Captain Lanier, who was with Sergeant Gunderson outside 1122 King Road. Captain Lanier confirmed with Sergeant Gunderson that they understood Dee co-owned the dog, and the dog was taken to the animal shelter for safekeeping. I was told the dog was uninjured and didn't have any blood on it. I agreed to release Murphy to Dee because it was my understanding we had only taken the dog into custody for safekeeping and he was an owner. I asked to have a patrol officer meet Dee at the animal shelter to release the dog. I continued to work with detectives and command staff for the rest of the day. Moscow Police Department, Danny Vargas. On November 20th, 2022, multiple friends and family of the victims gathered in Moscow, organized into several groups, and canvassed several areas in Moscow for possible evidence. I was contracted by several people from the groups when they located something of interest. I met with the groups and photographed and collected the following items. A clear food service grade plastic glove located at the top of the hillside, to the west of the walking path in between Nez Perce and the U of I administration building. Just down from where this plastic glove was located was a large beige metal Generac generator box. There was a plastic bag inside of the box which looked like it had white grease rags inside of it. I photographed this item and did not collect it. A light pink beige pair of women's underwear of Warner's brand. This was located in a juniper shrub by the Chautauqua Amphitheater in the Charles Houston Chautauqua Arboretum. A black winter glove, one size fits all. This item was located near the steps which lead from Memorial Gym parking lot 39 up to the tennis courts. The items I collected were transported to Moscow Police Department, stored in a temporary storage in detectives, so they could dry, and were later booked into Moscow Police Department evidence. One group located what they believed to be blood spots on several rocks in the Arboretum and Botanical Garden, either gathering place on the north side near the kiosk. Detective Talbot with ISP tested the spots and determined they were not blood. One group located what they believed to be blood on the stairs of Building 5 at the Grove Apartments. Detective Talbot determined that was not blood. The photos I took were copied to a DVD and booked into Moscow Police Department evidences. Moscow Police Department, S. Gunderson. On 11/13/2022, at approximately 12:05 hours, I arrived at 1122 King Road, referenced an unconscious subject. It was quickly determined the scene was likely a quadruple homicide based on our observations. When I arrived at the third floor to assess the scene, I noticed a medium-sized, curly-haired 10 dog on the bed, inside the western third-floor bedroom, later identified as Kaylee Gonzalez's room. The dog appeared to be timid/scared and didn't react to our presence. Due to the chaos surrounding the scene, my initial concern was preserving the scene. As part of that process, I asked one of the officers to shut the door so the dog did not attempt to jump on the bed with any of the victims. After the area was cordoned off and the area was secure, Corporal Snyder began taking photos of the scene. At some point prior to this process, the dog moved from the bed to under the desk in Kaylee's room. After photos were completed, I asked LCSO Deputy Olson to respond and assist by taking the dog to the Humane Society of the Paulos for safekeeping. I collected the dog from under the desk. The dog was very timid and took some coaxing to move from under the desk, but did not appear to have any obvious injuries or stains on its body or paws. Due to the amount of blood inside the bedroom where the victims were located and the lack of blood around the dog, I didn't believe the dog was on or around the victims. I walked the dog to the front door, where Officer Warner was stationed, and asked him to hold on to the dog until Deputy Olson arrived a short time later. Deputy Olson arrived. I walked the dog from Officer Warner to Deputy Olson, who was standing in the street at my request. Deputy Olson transported the dog to the Humane Society of Paulos. I asked Deputy Olson to write on the intake sheet for the Humane Society to not release the dog to anyone unless Moscow Police Department gave approval first. After I released the dog to Deputy Olson, I resumed managing the scene until I was relieved by the detective unit. I did not take any photos of the dog specifically during my response to the scene. Some of the photos taken by Corporal Snyder, evidence item number 1, have the dog in the background. The dog can also be seen on my BWC. In reviewing Officer Nunez's BWC of his initial response and clear of the residence, the door to Gonzalez's bedroom was open upon his arrival and the dog was laying on the bed. I feel like another thing that's not really talked about, because obviously everyone's first thought is the victims' families. I can't imagine what Murphy went through in this whole thing. Who knows what he saw, who knows what he heard. Obviously, he was freaked out if he was barking. I still don't understand the whole thing about him being outside. I don't understand, did BK take him out. Like, but that's not in any of the things that they've talked about. I don't know how he would have ended up outside and then back inside. And if the door was open, the fact that he didn't go in the room, you'd think he would try to go to Haley. I don't know. If only he could speak, honestly. I mean, this would have been figured out a lot sooner, but I can't imagine the things he saw and experienced. And the confusion too. I always think about that. Like, you can't explain to a dog the way you can a human about what happened. So their person's just gone, you know, and they don't really have the grieving process of understanding what happened and why. Their person's just gone and they don't know how. So whenever Murphy's brought up, it also makes me really sad because, I mean, he experienced a pretty horrific thing too. Moscow Police Department, N. Rosenthal. On 11/13/2022 at around 1800 hours, I was tasked with releasing a dog from the Humane Society to his owner, J.D. The dog had been transported earlier in the day from 1122 King Road to the Humane Society by LCSO Deputy Olson. I released the dog to D without incident and gave the impound paperwork to Captain Lanier, no BWC. Moscow Police Department, Lawrence Mowry. On January 24th, 2023, I applied for a warrant for the user subscriber information and user data associated with the Tinder account of BK with any of the following identifiers. And then a list of his emails. Blacked out, but obviously there are his emails. On January 25th, 2023, the warrant was granted and signed by Magistrate Megan Marshall with 7 days to serve the legal process. January 26, 2023, at approximately 09:22 hours, the warrant was served and the Tinder law enforcement portal. I received an email shortly after the submission confirming the receipt of the request, assigning the internal reference. Later that day, I received a call from SM, customer representative from Match Group. M informed me they had located a previous account linked to the email blank@gmail.com. However, no further information was available as the account was deleted. I requested any and all information available for the deleted account. On January 30th, 2023, I received an email from Tinder stating the data requested pursuant to the warrant was available to download. I logged into the law enforcement portal and began downloading the files to the forensic computers, located in the secure forensic computer lab at the Moscow Police Department. In reviewing the contents, I found several unique identifiers associated with blank. These UIDs were also associated with the phone number of blank. Moscow Police Department, Brett Payne. Based off of information obtained during the course of this investigation, I applied for an arrest warrant for BCK. Magistrate Judge Marshall signed the warrant on 12/29/2022. Previous search warrants and information led investigators to believe BK left Pullman, Washington, and returned to his parents' home in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. Sergeant Gilbertson, ISP, TS, FBI, and I flew to Pennsylvania on 12/29/2022 and met with the Pennsylvania State Police Department, PSP, and FBI personnel there. At approximately 0100 hours on 12/30/2022, the PSP CERT team conducted an operation at blank and took BK into custody based off of the warrant signed by Judge Marshall. BK was taken to a nearby PSP barracks where Sergeant Gilbertson and I interviewed him for approximately 45 minutes. See Sergeant Gilbertson's report on the interview for full details. The warrant was served to BK upon his extradition back to Idaho and booking with the Latah County Jail. Moscow Police Department, Brett Payne. As part of the investigation, an executive search commonly referred to in law enforcement as a video canvass was conducted in the area of the King Road residence. This video canvass was to obtain any footage from the early morning hours of November 13, 2022, in the area of King Road residence and surrounding neighborhoods in an effort to locate the suspects or suspects' vehicles traveling to or leaving from the King Road residence. This video canvass resulted in the collection of numerous surveillance videos in the area from both residential and business addresses. I reviewed numerous videos that were collected and have had conversations with other MPD officers, ISP detectives, and FBI agents that are similarly reviewing the footage that was obtained. A review of camera footage indicated that a white sedan, hereafter suspect vehicle 1, was observed traveling westbound in the blank block of Indian Hills Drive in Moscow at approximately 3:26 a.m. and westbound on Steiner Avenue at Idaho Highway 95 in Moscow at approximately 3:28 a.m. On this video, it appeared suspect vehicle 1 was not displaying a front license plate, nor did it appear the vehicle had fog lights on the lower portion of the front bumper, based off the video obtained from SM, located blank. This was the video which captured suspect vehicle 1 crossing South Main Street from Steiner Avenue to Launder Avenue at approximately 3:28 a.m. A review of footage from multiple videos obtained from the King Road neighborhood showed multiple sightings of suspect vehicle 1 starting at 3:29 a.m. and ending at 4:20 a.m. These sightings show suspect vehicle 1 makes an initial 3 passes by 1122 King Road and then leaves via Walenta Drive. Based off of my experience as a patrol officer, this is a residential neighborhood with very limited number of vehicles that travel in the area during the early morning hours. Upon review of the video, there are only a few cars that enter and exit this area during the time frame. Suspect vehicle 1 can be seen entering the area a 4th time at approximately 4:04 a.m. It can be seen driving eastbound on King Road, stopping and turning around in front of blank Queen Road, number blank, and then driving back westbound on King Road. When suspect vehicle 1 is in front of the King Road residence, it appeared to unsuccessfully attempt to park or turn around in the road. The vehicle then continued to the intersection of Queen Road and King Road, where it can be seen completing a 3-point turn and then driving eastbound again down Queen Road. Suspect vehicle 1 is next seen departing the area of King Road residence at approximately 4:20 a.m. at a high rate of speed. Suspect vehicle 1 is next observed traveling southbound on Walenta Drive. Based on my knowledge of this area and review of camera footage in the neighborhood, that does not show suspect vehicle 1 during that time frame. I believe the suspect vehicle 1 likely exited the neighborhood at the Palos River Drive and Conestoga Drive. Palos River Drive is at the southern edge of Moscow and proceeds into Whitman County, Washington. Eventually, the road leads to Pullman, Washington. Pullman, Washington is approximately 10 miles away from Moscow, Idaho. Both Pullman and Moscow are small college towns, and people commonly travel back and forth between them. Law enforcement officers provided video footage of suspect vehicle 1 to the forensic examiners with the Federal Bureau of Investigation that regularly utilizes surveillance footage and identifies the year, make, and model of an unknown vehicle that is observed by one or more cameras during the commission of a criminal offense. The forensic examiner has approximately 35 years of law enforcement experience with 12 years at the FBI. His specific training includes identifying unique characteristics of vehicles, and he uses databases that give visual clues of vehicles across the state to identify differences between vehicles. After reviewing the numerous observations of suspect vehicle 1, the forensic examiner initially believed that suspect vehicle 1 was a 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra. Upon further review, he indicated it could also be a 2011 to 2016 Hyundai Elantra. As a result, investigators have been reviewing information on persons in possession of a vehicle that is 2011 to 2016 white Hyundai Elantra. Investigators were given access to the video footage on the Washington State University, WSU campus located in Pullman, Washington. A review of that video indicated that approximately 2:53 a.m. on November 13th, a white sedan, which is consistent with the description of the white Elantra known as suspect vehicle 1, was observed traveling southeast on Nevada Street in Pullman, Washington towards SR 270. SR 270 connects Pullman, Washington to Moscow, Idaho. This camera footage from Pullman, Washington was provided to the same FBI forensic examiner. The forensic examiner identified the vehicle observed in Pullman, Washington as being a 2014 to 2016 Hyundai Elantra. At approximately 5:25 a.m., a white sedan, which was consistent with the description of suspect vehicle 1, was observed on 5 cameras in Pullman and on WSU campus cameras. The first camera that recorded the white sedan was located at blank Johnson Road in Pullman. The white sedan was observed traveling northbound on Johnson Road. Johnson Road leads directly back to West Palos River Drive in Moscow, which intersects with Conestoga Drive. The white sedan was then observed turning north to Bishop Boulevard and northeast onto SR 270 at approximately 5:27 a.m. The white Elantra was observed on cameras traveling northbound on Stadium Way at Nevada Street, Stadium Way at Grimes Way, Stadium Drive at Wilson Road, and Stadium Way at Cougar Way. On November 25, 2022, Moscow Police Department asked area law enforcement agencies to be on the lookout for a white Hyundai Elantra in the area. On November 29, 2022, at approximately 12:28 a.m., Washington State University police officer Daniel Tiengo queried the white Elantra registered at WSU. As a result of that query, he located a 2015 white Elantra with a Pennsylvania license plate, blank. This vehicle was registered to BK, residing at blank, Pullman, Washington. Blank blank is approximately 3/4 of a mile from the intersection of Stadium Way and Cougar Way, the last camera location that picked up the white Elantra. The same day at approximately 12:58 a.m., WSU officer Curtis Whitman was looking for a white Hyundai Elantras and located a 2015 white Hyundai Elantra at Blank in Pullman in the parking lot. Blank is an apartment complex that houses WSU students. Officer Whitman also ran the car and it returned to BK with a Washington tag. Upon receipt of this information, I reviewed BK's Washington State driver's license information and photographed via a driver's license query for that name. This license indicates that BK is a white male with a height of 6 feet and weighs 185 pounds. Additionally, the photograph of BK shows that he has bushy eyebrows. BK's physical description is consistent with the description of the male DM saw inside the King Road residence on November 13th. Further investigation includes a review of the Latah County Sheriff's Deputy CPL Duke's body cam, and reports showed that on August 21, 2022, BK was detained as part of a traffic stop that occurred in Moscow, Idaho by CPL Duke. At the time, BK, who was the sole occupant, was driving the white 2015 Hyundai Elantra with Pennsylvania plate blank, which was set to expire on November 30, 2022. During the stop, which was recorded via law enforcement body camera, BK provided his phone number as blank, hereafter the 8458 phone, as his cellular telephone number. Investigators conducted an electronic database queries and learned that the 8458 phone number is issued by AT&T. On October 14, 2022, BK was detained as part of a traffic stop by a WSU police officer. Upon review of that body cam and report of the story, BK was the sole occupant and was driving a white 2015 Hyundai Elantra with Pennsylvania plate blank. On November 18, 2022, according to Washington State licensing, BK registered the 2015 white Elantra with Washington and later received a Washington plate blank. Prior to this time, the 2015 white Elantra was registered in Pennsylvania, which does not require a front license plate to be displayed. This was learned through communications with a Pennsylvania officer who is currently certified in the state of Pennsylvania. Based on my own experience in communication with Washington's law enforcement, I know that Idaho and Washington require front and back license plate to be displayed. Investigators believe that BK continued to drive the white Elantra as the vehicle was captured on December 13, 2022 by a license plate reader in Loma, Colorado. BK's Elantra was then queried December 15, 2022 by law enforcement in the Hancock County, Indiana. It was later learned this was a result of a traffic stop in Hancock County, Indiana, wherein BK was the driver of the white Elantra with his father as the passenger. BK was stopped again 9 minutes later in Hancock County and released without citation or further enforcement. On December 16, 2022, approximately 2:26 p.m., surveillance video obtained by request of the FBI in Pennsylvania shows BK's Elantra in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. The only visible occupant of the vehicle was a white male whose description was consistent with BK. BK has family in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, learned through a TLO search and locate tool database query, namely blank, an address which is inside the gated community where the footage was captured. Based on information provided on the WSU website, BK was a student in criminology at Washington State University, pursuant to records provided by a member of the interview panel for Pullman Police Department. We learned that the fall 22 semester was BK's first semester at WSU. Additionally, these same records indicated BK's past education included undergraduate degrees in psychology and cloud-based forensics. These records also showed BK wrote an essay which he applied for an internship with the Pullman Police Department in the fall of 2022. BK wrote in his essay he had an interest in assisting rural law enforcement agencies with how to better collect and analyze technological data in public safety operations. He also provided a Reddit survey, which can be found in an open-source internet search. The survey asked for participants to provide information to understand how emotions and psychological traits influence decision-making when committing a crime. As part of this investigation, law enforcement obtained search warrants to determine the cellular devices that utilize cellular towers in close proximity to the King Road residence on November 13, 2022 between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. After determining that BK was associated to both the 2015 white Elantra and the 8458 phone, investigators reviewed these search warrant returns. A query of the 8458 phone in these returns did not show the 8458 phone utilizing cellular tower resources in close proximity to the King Road residence between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. Based on my training experience and conversation with law enforcement officers that specialize in the utilization of cell phone tower records as part of the investigations, individuals can either leave their cellular telephone at a different location before committing a crime or turn their cell phone off prior to going to the location to commit a crime. This is done by subjects in an effort to avoid alerting law enforcement that a cellular device associated with them was in a particular area where the crime is committed. I also know that on numerous occasions, subjects will surveil an area where they intend to commit a crime prior to the date of the crime. Depending on the circumstances, this could be done a few days before or for several months prior to the commission of the crime. During these types of surveillance, it is possible that an individual would not leave their cellular telephone at a separate location or turn it off since they do not plan to commit the offense on that particular day. On December 23, 2022, I applied for and was granted a search warrant for historical phone records between November 12, 2022 at 12 a.m. and November 14th at 12 a.m. for the 8458 phone held by the provider AT&T, approximately 24 hours preceding and following the time of the homicides. On December 23, 2022, pursuant to that search warrant, I received records for the 8458 phone from AT&T. These records indicated that the 8458 phone is subscribed to BK at an address in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, and the account has been open since June 23, 2022. These records also included historical cell site location information for the 8458 phone. After receiving this information, I consulted with an FBI special agent that is certified as a member of the Cellular Analysis Survey Team, CAST. Members of CAST are certified with the FBI to provide expert testimony in the field of historical CSLI and are required to pass extensive training that includes both written and practical examination prior to being certified with CAST, as well as the completion of yearly certification requirements. Additionally, the FBI CAST special agent that I consulted with has over 15 years of federal law enforcement experience, which includes 6 years with the FBI. From information provided by CAST, I was able to determine the estimated locations for the 8458 phone from November 12, 2022 to November 13, 2022, the time period authorized by the court. On November 13, 2022, at approximately 2:42 a.m., the 8458 phone was utilizing cellular resources that provided coverage to blank, Pullman, Washington, hereafter the BK residence. At approximately 2:47 a.m., the 8458 phone stops reporting to the network, which is consistent with either the phone being in an area without cellular coverage, the connection to the network is disabled, such as putting the phone in airplane mode, or that the phone is turned off. The 8458 phone does not report to the network again until approximately 4:48 a.m., at which time it utilized cellular resources that provide coverage to Idaho State Highway 95 south of Moscow, Idaho, near Blaine, Idaho. Between 4:50 a.m. and 5:26 a.m., the phone utilizes cellular resources that are consistent with the 8458 phone traveling south on Idaho State Highway 95 to Genesee, Idaho, then traveling west towards Uniontown, Washington, and then north back to Pullman, Washington. At approximately 5:30 a.m., the 8458 phone is utilizing resources that provide coverage to Pullman, Washington, and consistent with the phone traveling back to the BK residence. The 8458 phone's movements are consistent with the movements of the White Elantra, and it is observed traveling north on Stadium Drive at approximately 5:27 a.m. Based on a review of the 8458 phone's estimated locations and travel, the 8458 phone's travel is consistent with that of the White Elantra. Further review indicated that the 8458 phone utilized cellular resources on November 13, 2022 that are consistent with the 8458 phone leaving the area of the BK residence at approximately 9 a.m. and traveling to Moscow, Idaho. Specifically, the 8458 phone utilized cellular resources that would provide coverage to the King Road residence between 9:12 a.m. and 9:21 a.m. The 8458 phone next utilized cellular resources that are consistent with the 8458 phone traveling back to the area of the BK residence and arriving to the area at approximately 9:32 a.m. Investigators found that the 8458 phone did connect to a cell phone tower that provides service to Moscow on November 14, 2022, but investigators do not believe the 8458 phone was in Moscow on that date. The 8458 phone has not connected to any towers that provide service to Moscow since that date. Based on my training experience and the facts of the investigation thus far, I believe that BK, the user of the 8458 phone, was likely the driver of the white Elantra that is observed departing Pullman, Washington, and that this vehicle is likely suspect 1 vehicle. Additionally, the route of travel of the 8458 phone during the early morning hours of November 13, 2022, and the lack of the 8458 phone reporting to AT&T between 2:47 a.m. and 4:48 a.m. is consistent with BK attempting to conceal his location during the quadruple homicide that occurred at the King Road residence. BK would likely have information on how his cellular data can be utilized in criminal investigations as part of his past studies. On December 23, 2022, I was granted a search warrant for BK's historical CSLI from June 23, 2022 to current prospective location information, and a pen register/trap and trace on the 8458 phone to aid in efforts to determine if BK stalked any of the victims in this case prior to the offense, conducted surveillance on the King Road residence, was in contact with any of the victims associated before or after the alleged offense, any locations that may contain evidence of the murders that occurred on November 13, 2022, the location of the white Elantra registered to Coburger, as well as the location of the white Elantra registered to BK, as well as the location of BK. On December 23, 2022, pursuant to that search warrant, I received historical records for the 8458 phone from AT&T from the time the account was opened in June 2022. After consulting with Cass Special Agent, I was able to determine the estimated locations for the 8458 phone from June 2022 to present, the time period authorized by the court. The records for the 8458 phone show the 8458 phone utilizing cellular resources that provide coverage to the area of 1122 King Road on at least 12 occasions prior to November 13, 2022. All these occasions, except for one, occurred in the late evening and early morning hours of their respective days. One of these occasions, on August 21, 2022, the 8458 phone utilized cellular resources, providing coverage to the King Road residence from approximately 10:34 p.m. to 11:35 p.m. At approximately 11:37 p.m., BK was stopped by Latah County Sheriff's Deputy CPL Duke, as mentioned above. The 8458 phone was utilizing cellular resources consistent with the location of the traffic stop during this time, Farm Road and Pullman Highway. Further analysis of the cellular data provided showed that the 8458 phone utilized cellular resources on November 13, 2022, consistent with the 8458 phone traveling from Pullman, Washington to Lewiston, Idaho via U.S. Highway 195. At approximately 12:36 p.m., the 8458 phone utilized cellular resources that would provide coverage to Kate's Cup of Joe coffee stand, located at blank, Clarkston, Washington. Surveillance footage from the U.S. Chef's store located at blank, Clarkston, Washington, and adjacent to Kate's Cup of Joe showed a white Elantra consistent with the suspect vehicle 1 drive past Kate's Cup of Joe at a time consistent with the cellular data from the 8458 phone. At approximately 12:46 p.m., the 8458 phone then utilized cellular data in the area of the Albertsons grocery store at blank in Clarkston, Washington. Surveillance footage obtained from the Albertsons showed BK exit the white Elantra consistent with suspect vehicle 1 at approximately 12:49 p.m. Interior surveillance cameras showed BK walk through the store, purchase unknown items at the checkout, and leave at approximately 1:04 p.m. BK's possible path of travel is depicted below. Unfortunately, we can't see that. Additional analysis of the records for 8458 phone indicated that between approximately 5:32 p.m. and 8:36 p.m., the 8458 phone utilized cellular resources that provide coverage to Johnson, Washington. The 8458 phone then stops reporting to the network from approximately 5:36 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. That is consistent with the 8458 phone being in the area that the 8458 phone traveled the hours immediately following the suspected time the homicides occurred. On December 27, 2022, Pennsylvania agents recovered the trash from the BK family residence located in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. The evidence was sent to the Idaho State Lab for testing on December 28, 2022. The Idaho State Lab reported that DNA profile obtained from the trash and the DNA profile obtained from the sheath identified a male as not being excluded as the biological father of suspect profile. At least 99.9998% of the male population would be expected to be excluded from the possibility of being the suspect's biological father. Based on the above information, I requested an arrest warrant issued for BCK, date of birth blank 1994 for burglary at 1122 King Street in Moscow, Idaho, and 4 counts of murder in the first degree for the murders of Madison Mogen, Haley Gonzalez, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. All right, so let's discuss this. When the affidavit was released, God, I don't even know, like February of 2023, it stated the information about his father's DNA being used to match his DNA on the knife sheath, and people were getting confused and saying, well, then his dad did it. I guess it's kind of hard to understand. I mean, they say it the only way they can, but it's hard to understand if you don't know what they're talking about. BK's father's DNA was a 99.9998% match of the DNA that would be the father of the suspect, if that makes sense. I don't know how to explain that in like a way that makes more sense. Essentially, it's saying that the portion of DNA that BK has from his father is confirmed that they're related. So then they're able to confirm the father correlated with the son. The son's DNA is confirmed to be the suspected son's DNA. I hope that made sense for anyone who's confused about that. And then I also have seen people confused on the fact that there was a burglary charge. It's not because he stole anything. I found out that in certain states, including Idaho, that a burglary charge can be given to someone just for breaking and entering with the intent to commit a crime. Not necessarily stealing something, but in this case, the crime intended was murder. So that's what the burglary charge is for, is entering the residence unlawfully to commit a crime. Moscow Police Department, Lawrence Mowry. On January 24th, 2023, I applied for a warrant for the user's subscriber information and user data associated with a Dropbox account of BK with any of the following identifiers. And it lists his emails, but they're redacted. On January 25th, 2023, the warrant was granted. On February 2nd, 2023, I received an email from Dropbox stating the data requested pursuant to the warrant was available to download. I logged into the law enforcement portal and began downloading the files to the forensic computers located in the secure forensic computer lab at the Moscow Police Department. In reviewing the data, it showed the account belonged to BK with an email address of blank@desales.edu. The account was created on March 5th, 2021. It showed the last login date of March 9th, 2021, 0240 UTC. There were 3 files in the account data. 2 appeared to be associated with using the Dropbox service. The third was an MP4 video titled Kids for Cash MP4. This appears to be a movie released in 2013, and IMDb.com provides the following as an overview. Kids for Cash is a riveting look behind the notorious judicial scandal that rocked the nation. Beyond the millions paid in high-stakes corruption, Kids for Cash exposes a shocking American secret. In the wake of the shootings at Columbine, a small town celebrates a charismatic judge who is hell-bent on keeping kids in line until one parent dares to question the motives behind his brand of justice. This real-life thriller reveals the untold stories of the masterminds at the center of the scandal and the chilling aftermath of lives destroyed in the process of a stunning emotional roller coaster. Do with that what you will. I don't think that really has anything to do with the case at all. Maybe insight into his brain. Moscow Police Department, Dustin Blaker. On February 2nd, 2023, at around 0800 hours, Corporal Brett Payne and myself responded to the secure storage area at the city shop to take photos of property belonging to Dylan Mortensen and an other identified female. MPD had previously removed items belonging to Dylan, Bethany, Xana, Ethan, Maddie, and Kaylee. Items had also been removed from a spare bedroom on the first floor. Ann Taylor, defense counsel, was granted permission to go through the items to see what could be released back to the proper owners. Prior to Miss Taylor being given a chance to look at these items, property belonging to Xana, Maddie, and Kaylee had already been released. MPD had also given Dylan back her belongings, but were able to get her to return them. Miss Taylor requested we set aside the following items. Items from Dylan's belongings: handwritten note, pink and white blanket with red hearts, pink and white cloth possible used as a curtain or decoration, black and white Vans shoes, red and white unknown brand shoes, black and white Converse shoes. Items from the spare bedroom: Adidas black and white short sleeve t-shirt, size small, green and pink coat, unknown brand. The above items were placed in cardboard boxes and set aside until Miss Taylor can get a court order stating that she can take the items. Moscow Police Department, Brett Payne. On or about January 6, 2023, FBI analyst T provided me a file for each of the 4 victims. The files contained background information of the victims from the University of Idaho. The information was obtained by request during the early days of the investigation. I maintained the files in a locked file cabinet in my office until February 16, 2023. On February 16, 2023, I turned the originals over to Moscow Police Department Records Clerk, M.A., in order for the files to be scanned and attached to the case files. Sorry, it's the next day. I've had to take quite a few breaks while filming this, so I ended up calling it quits at 4:30 in the morning. But here we go. Moscow Police Department, Dustin Blaker. On February 22nd, 2023, I was listening to the tip line phone calls, and a tip line from J.E. from Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania was left on February 16th at 06:49 hours. In the tip, J stated her brother, S.E., and a R.K. used to be friends with B.K. when they were in high school. J stated she felt it would be in our best interest to talk to R about B.K. I called J, and she confirmed her brother S and R were friends with B.K. in high school, and he had been in her mother's house during that time period. J was not sure if it would be helpful for us to talk to R, but wanted us to know about this. I asked J if her brother S would talk to us as well. J told me she was not sure but would reach out to him and see if he would call us. I was able to locate info on J on TLO. I used this info to find info on S and R. I will provide this information to Corporal Payne so it can be provided to the FBI in Pennsylvania so they can reach out to S and R for a potential interview. On November 26, 2022, I applied for and was granted a warrant to serve on Google for information on accounts searching the following search terms from August 1, 2022 to November 13, 2022. These search terms include 1122 Moscow ID, 1122 King Road, Moscow, Idaho, 1122 King Road, King Girls with a Z at the end, Kaylee Gonzalez, Maddie Mogan, Madison Mogan, Xana Kernodle, Ethan Chapin, Dylan Mortensen, Bethany Funkel, LM. On November 26, 2022, at approximately 15:46 hours, the warrant was served via email to blank@google.com. On December 1st, 2022, I applied for and was granted a warrant to serve on Google for information on accounts searching the following search terms from November 13th, 2022 at 12 p.m. Universal Coordinated Time, UTC, to November 13, 2022 at 8 o'clock p.m. These search terms include Moscow murders, murder in Moscow ID, murder in Moscow, Idaho, Idaho crime, Moscow, Idaho stabbing, University of Idaho murders, University of Idaho stabbing, King Road murder, King Road stabbing, King Road stab, Moscow ID news, Moscow, Idaho news, Moscow News, Idaho, Pullman News, Northern Idaho News, North Idaho News, campus stabbing, campus murders, DNA on knife, getting blood out of clothing, how to get blood out of clothing, getting blood out of a vehicle, how to get blood out of a vehicle. On December 1st, 2022, at approximately 13:43 hours, the warrant was served via email to blank@google.com. This was done in an attempt to locate a suspect possibly searching for the victims prior to the murder, potentially gaining information on the persons, their residence, or lifestyles, which could be located on social media. The searches after were done in an attempt to locate the suspect possibly searching for information on the murders prior to the discovery of the victims. I was contacted by Google regarding the warrants and informed the process of searches were extremely complicated and a large date range was problematic to their search queries. They stated they had to restart the process several times due to the complexity of the searches. On December 19, 2022, BK was identified as a possible suspect. This says on February 15, 2022, but I'm assuming that's a mistype and it should say 2023. So on February 15, 2023, after talking with other investigators and conferring with the Latah prosecutor's office, it was decided to return the warrant without data as the original broad scope of these warrants was to determine a potential suspect, when none were known. New warrants specific to BK's Gmail accounts, which can include search history, have been requested. Moscow Police Department, Danny Vargas. Detective Schwecke with ISP provided me with a folder that contained the following receipts he collected during his investigation from some local businesses. The details are listed below. Walmart, blank, Pullman, Washington. BK's US debit card ending in number 1973. He made purchases at Walmart on 10/28, 11/07, 11/10, 11/12, 11/16, 11/17, 11/23, 11/29, 12/01, 12/02, 12/05, 12/06, and 12/08, 2022. A majority of the items purchased were food items. On 11/7/2022, BK purchased a beanie hat, but there was no description of the hat. I spoke with an employee from Walmart, and he stated at the time he met with Detective Schwecke, they were unable to locate the details of the exact beanie which BK purchased. On 12/1/2022, he purchased utility clothes. I spoke with an employee from Walmart who told me this item was a 9-pack hand towels which were 2 shades of gray. There was nothing else of interest listed on the above receipts. Target, blank, Moscow, Idaho. BK's U.S. debit card ending in number 1973. Purchases were made on 11/10, 11/9, 11/8, 11/6, 11/6, 11/4, 10/24, 10/20, 10/19, 10/18, 10/13, 10/10, 10/06, 9/30, 9/26, 9/10, 8/31. One receipt from Target was provided from a transaction which belonged to Bethany Frankel at 11/10/2022 at 16:09 hours. BK was at Target on the same day as Frankel, but completed his transaction at 17:42 hours. It is unknown if Frankel and BK were in the Target at the same time. There was nothing of interest purchased by BK. Harbor Freight, Pullman, Washington. BK's U.S. debit card ending in number 1973. 11/20/2022, purchased a 1,000-watt continuous inverter. 11/23/2022, purchased a 2,000-watt/4,000-watt power inverter and a 1-year ITC membership. Detective Schwecke collected a copy of the owner's manual for this item. 11/23/2022, purchased inverter cable. There were several other receipts from other customers which Detective Schwecke collected at Harbor Freight. These receipts do not appear to be related but were collected. Customer BN, 10/23/2022 at 11:52 hours. Customer RH, 10/10/2022 at 18:07 hours. Customer JW, 11/26/2022 at 17:03 hours. Taj Grocery, Moscow, Idaho. Receipt for a purchase made by Maddie Mogan at 11/12/2022 at 11:05 hours. And it does not tell us what that receipt was for. Storage unit information from Colfax, Washington. Detective Schwecke collected unit renter information and contact information for 2 separate storage units in Colfax, Washington. 4-Star Supply Mini Storage, Colfax, Washington 99111, and Clay Street Storage Units, Colfax, Washington 99111. The name BK was not listed as a renter at either storage unit facility. All of the documents provided to me from Detective Schwecke are booked into Moscow Police Department evidence. Moscow Police Department, Brett Payne. On Friday, March 3rd, I spoke to VH on the phone in reference to a tip she reported to the tip line. I did not record our conversation. H originally reported the tip in January of 2023 and stated she had an encounter with someone she thought was BK. I called H at blank and spoke to her about the tip. H told me she was working as a dancer at S on blank club in blank blank during the 2018 to 2019 timeframe. Blank is a 2-hour drive from blank, Pennsylvania. H stated she was unsure which of those 2 years the encounter took place. H stated she came into work on what she described as a slow day and noticed only one man seated next to the stage alone. H stated she got on the stage and began her dance when she noticed the man seemed to be talking to himself. H stated the man made her feel uneasy, but she continued her dance. H told me during the dance she heard the man stating something about wanting to kill people. H told me she thought she misheard the man, so she did not acknowledge the statement until he said it again. H said she could not remember exactly what the man said, but thought it was something to the effect of wanting to kill people. H told me she engaged with the man after the second comment, thinking he was trying to get attention. H told me she jokingly asked the man who he was going to kill, to which he replied something to the effect of, "Whoever I want." H completed her dance and left the stage. H told me the conversation was strange enough she remembered telling the bouncers of the club to keep an eye on the man, who she said sat and watched the other dancers for some time. Eventually, H told me she offered the man a private dance as he was the only patron in the club. During this dance, H told me the man told her to look him directly in the eyes the entire time and asked her questions about what car she drove and where she lived. H told me she finished the private dance, at which point the man left and did not return to the club to her knowledge. H told me she did not think about the encounter until she saw BK's picture on TV upon his arrest. H told me she was fairly certain BK was the man she encountered in the club that day. H did not have any further information to corroborate her story and told me she just wanted investigators to be aware. H reiterated to me that she was fairly sure BK was the man that she saw. I concluded my conversation with H after I confirmed she would be willing to speak again if I needed further information. On March 15, 2023, I drove the most likely route BK took while driving near 1122 King Road on November 13, 2022. During his drive, I took the photos of 1122 King Road from Molenta Drive, the road his vehicle can be seen taking on the surveillance footage from blank King Road, in order to record a daytime view of the residence from Molenta Drive prior to foliage returning to the trees in the area. I took the following photos and uploaded them to the Spillman case file. 1122 from Molenta 1, 1122 from Molenta 2, 1122 from Molenta 3, 1122 from Molenta 4, 1122 from Molenta 5, 1122 from Upper Lot, Molenta from 1122. In addition, Sergeant Blaker and I took Moscow Police Department Patrol Car 4 and drove the most likely route BK took during the early morning hours of November 13, 2022, based off of various surveillance footage recovered during the investigation. The drive was recorded out of each driver's side passenger window via Moscow Police Department body cameras assigned to Sergeant Blaker and Officer House, as well as the dash-mounted camera in Moscow Police Department, Car 4. Moscow Police Department, Dustin Blaker. On March 21, 2023, I was asked to see if we still had video surveillance from the front lobby area of the police department from November 13, 2022. I was informed BK's defense team had requested any video showing where any witnesses may have been kept on the day of the homicide. I checked the cameras in the front lobby and the cameras in the training room. I was only able to recover video from 3 cameras which show the front lobby area. I burned the video to a DVD and booked it into property. It needs to be noted none of these cameras are equipped with audio. Moscow Police Department, Brett Payne. Item 668. Knife. I was notified via email on Monday, March 20th, 2023 of a found property call reported to LCSO wherein the RP discovered a K-Bar brand knife in some bushes in the city of Genese, Idaho on the same day. Per the LCSO call records, the knife was located by a child playing in some trees at the top of Ash Street near Spruce Street. Deputy Whitting responded and booked the item into LCSO evidence. On March 21st, 2023, I responded to LCSO to look at the knife. The knife was a K-Bar brand knife with a blade approximately 4 inches in length. The knife was in a black Kydex sheath with cordage wrapped around the handle. The knife did not appear to match the wounds inflicted on all 4 victims. I collected the knife from LCSO and booked it into Moscow Police Department evidence on March 21st, 2023. I also attached a photo of the knife and the LCSO call record to this case file electronically. I was notified by ISP Detective Roberts at approximately 1300 hours on March 21st, 2023 that a landowner near Genese, Idaho found 2 knives in a roadside ditch. Detective Roberts was not available, so I called to speak to the reporting property, RH. H stated he was cleaning out irrigation ditches when he noticed 2 kitchen-style knives with duct tape handles in the ditch. H did not touch the knives and notified ISP. H told me where the knives were and I responded to collect them. The location provided was a ditch across the road from the driveway to blank Old Highway 95. I could immediately see the knives laying in the water and took several photos of the knives prior to the collection. Upon collection, I observed one knife was a large butcher knife and the other was a small steak knife. The handles of both knives were wrapped in duct tape. Prior to leaving, I conducted one more visual search of the area and located a makeshift duct tape sheath in the culvert below where the knives were located. The sheath fit both knives at the same time. I collected the sheath as well. Upon further examination, neither knife appeared to match the wounds on the 4 victims. The larger knife blade was too wide to have inflicted the wounds on the victims, and the smaller steak knife appeared to be too short. However, I booked both items in case further examination was needed. I booked the knives into Moscow Police Department evidence and attached photos to this case electronically. On March 4th, 2023, OT called the Moscow Police Department tip line and left a voicemail regarding a tip for this case, which she described as seeing a man walk by her house at blank sometime during August or September of 2022. Sergeant Blaker sent me the tip on March 15th, 2023. I spoke to T via phone on March 21st, 2023. I did not record our conversation. I asked T to relay to me what her tip was in reference to. T told me she used to live at blank. This home was located approximately 0.13 miles due east of 1122 King Road. T told me she was home one day in August or September of 2022 when her daughter came running into the house, saying there was a man walking through their yard. T stated she looked out the window and saw a man who looked nervous walking on the south side of her house from east to west. T told me she frequently saw people walk by the house, but not into that particular area. T said the man had curly hair with a large nose and he walked by without saying anything. T stated the encounter became stranger when the man walked back by the house in the opposite direction, but taking the same route approximately 15 minutes later. T said she stepped outside and yelled to the man that he was on private property. T said the man didn't look at her and simply walked away. T then told me unprompted that she believed the male she saw was BK, after she saw a side profile picture of him on the news after his arrest. T stated she was 92% sure it was BK. T stated she did not see the man any other time after the occurrence in August or September. However, T told me there was another occurrence in June or July of 2022 when a white sedan was parked near her mailbox for over an hour. It should be noted blank is a dead-end road with only residences. T told me the vehicle left after her neighbor walked out to ask the man if he needed any help. T could not positively say what type of vehicle she saw that day. T was not able to provide any further specific detail about dates. On March 22, 2023, Sergeant Blaker and I went to the area where T said she saw the man. There is a well-worn path from Boyd Avenue through to Blake Avenue, which is likely where T saw the man. In addition, I spoke to the neighbor who spoke to the man in the white car, identified only as blank at blank, who stated he remembered the encounter but could not add any further information. Moscow Police Department, Lawrence Mowry. On January 24, 2023, I applied for a warrant for the user subscriber information and user data associated with a Reddit account of BK, with any of the following identifiers. In reviewing the contents associated with the blank@gmail.com email, I found the account name was blank and the registration date was September 24, 2021 at 10:54 UTC. The registration IP was blank, which showed a location near Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, with Penn Teledata. The email address for the account showed as verified. In the messages.csv data file, the following were located. 6/3/2022, 9:45 UTC. From blank to r/prison. Subject, research survey. Hello, I attempted to post a survey to the r/prison subreddit, but my post was automatically removed. I imagine this may be due to the lack of activity on my account. As I have seen other research recruitment posts on this subreddit within the past few months, would it be possible to obtain approval to submit a recruitment post to r/prison? The recruitment post has my information on it, and the survey itself has the information consent form that confirms my affiliation. I have been able to post my survey to other subreddits such as r/xcons and r/felons. You can look at the specifics of my recruitment post by looking at these posts. Thanks in advance. EK. 6/3/2022, 1809. From prison to u/blank. Subject, RE, research survey. I just approved the most recent one you posted. I have the auto-mod filter. Comments of new accounts are super low karma. It should be fine now. 6/8/2022, 2036 UTC. From blank to r/prison. Subject, repost of research survey. Hello, would it be possible to have a repost of my recruitment post approved for submission? I think it would be beneficial for the recruitment effort. Thanks. BK. 6/9/2022, 1:18 UTC. From felons to u/blank. Subject, you've been temporarily banned from participating in r/felons. You've been temporarily banned from participating in r/felons. This ban will last for 1 day. You can still view and subscribe to r/felons, but you won't be able to post or comment. Note from the moderators, we do not approve of these posts. Please stop posting this. If you have a question regarding your ban, you can contact the moderator team for r/felons by replying to this message. Please stop posting this. That's funny. The text associated with these posts were, hello, my name is... I am inviting you to participate in a research project that seeks to understand how emotions and psychological traits influence decision-making when committing a crime. In particular, this study seeks to understand the story behind your most recent criminal offense, with an emphasis on your thoughts and feelings throughout your experience. In the event that your most recent offense was not one that led to a conviction, you may still participate. Additional surveys are included after the open-ended section as to best understand your unique traits. The study should take about 30 minutes to complete fully. Your identity and all answers provided are completely confidential, and the link to the survey is also an anonymous link. This research has been approved by the DeSales University IRB. Participants must be 18 years of age or older. If you opt to participate, you may terminate participation at any time and for any reason. If you have any questions about this research, you may contact the research team via email, studentinvestigator bk at blank@desales.edu, mailed to blank@desales.edu. Thank you for your time. Moscow Police Department, Danny Vargas. On 11/12/2022, at approximately 23:40 hours, Whitcomb received a hit-and-run incident in the area of blank Pullman, Washington, DR number blank. Multiple Pullman Police Department officers arrived in the scene and blocked off the area where this incident occurred. The location of this accident was near the west entrance to the blank apartment complex near BK's residence. CF was later arrested as a suspect in this case and booked into Whitman County Jail. F was booked into Whitman County Jail 11/13/2022 at 8:45 a.m. While reviewing BK's cell phone data extraction, I located a screenshot of the Whitman County Jail roster with CF's information. The last modified date/time for the image was 11/13/2022 at 6:27 p.m. This image was taken from Meerkat. In BK's Chrome tab history on his phone, I located where he searched Google for broadcastify.com/listen/feed. Pullman Police and Fire Dispatch live audio feed on 11/13/2022 at 12:26 a.m. I'm going to touch on this more later because I have a rant about him at the end of this video. But for as genius as he thinks he is, all of these little things, it's like you're so stupid. Listening to the police and fire audio feed just a few hours before you commit the murders, it's hilarious because he thinks he's such a genius. He thinks he's better than everyone else. But all of these things are like, that was stupid. The massive ego on that guy. And the fact that he did not get away with this. The fact that they had him by the end of December. They were on his trail way before that even. I hope it haunts him every day about all these little things that he messed up on. I hope he drives himself crazy thinking about all of the mistakes he made, because he thinks he's such a genius. But look where he is now. Moscow Police Department, Brett Payne. On Wednesday, March 29, 2023, I attached the 2 documents pertaining to BK's application for the WSU Police Department internship. These documents were provided to me by a member of the interview panel for the internship that they did not want him for. Moscow Police Department, A. Dallinger. On April 14, 2023, I was contacted by SC via phone. S told me she was in town and was informed Moscow Police Department may still be in possession of some of Ethan's belongings. I told S I was not aware of any, but told her I would respond to the city shop where personal belongings retrieved from 1122 King Road were stored and see what was there. When I arrived at the city shop, I found there were 5 boxes of items labeled as being from both the living room area and the spare bedroom of the home. There was also a clear plastic tote which had miscellaneous clothing items in it. I advised S she could come to the city shop and look through the items if she wished. S arrived a short time later with her husband and daughter. The family looked through all the boxes and collected 3 items they believed belonged to Ethan. Sigma Chi banner, black sweatpants, brown belt. I created a receipt for the items utilizing a Moscow Police Department supplemental statement form, which S and I signed. I scanned and attached the receipt to this case. Moscow Police Department, Brett Payne. On Friday, April 21st, 2023, I received an email from AS from WSU with a secure link to download installment 8 of the WSU records requested via subpoena. I had already checked out of service for the day and did not access the link until Wednesday, April 26, 2023, at which time I followed the secure link and downloaded the files to my department computer. The files contained several screenshots of text conversations between professors referencing BK as well as meeting minutes from a meeting between BK and W on August 19th. One of the screenshots shows a conversation between someone titled M in the text window and an unknown person. The first message from M reads, "Do you want to take BK?" He listed you and A as people he was interested in working with. The other person replied, "If I must, ... I actually snorted when I read that the first time. Another screenshot of a message thread from M on September 14th reads, A tells me we need to do an intervention with BK. She's going to try and gather information, but apparently he's offended several of our female students. Assuming we get some details, how do you want to handle this? The reply reads, "Let's see when we have more info." There are 2 more text thread screenshots, the meeting notes and a self-evaluation form completed by BK in the files. I attached the files to this case electronically. I mean, even his teachers didn't like him. People are over here having conversations about how he's offending women. Genuinely, every single time I think of him, the first word that pops into my head is loser. Out of all the adjectives in the dictionary that you can use to describe someone, the first word that pops into my head is loser. He is such a loser. On December 29th, 2022, ISP Detective Sergeant Gilbertson, FBI Special Agent Shirley, and I arrived in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania in preparation of the arrest and search warrants for BK and his family's residence at blank, Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. After several coordination meetings, Detective Gilbertson, Special Agent Shirley, and I drove to the Pennsylvania State Police Barracks at Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, to await the arrival of BK after his arrest and to interview him upon his arrival. At approximately 0200 hours on December 30th, 2022, BK was brought to the PSP Stroudsburg Barracks and placed in an interview room. The interview was recorded on a built-in video system at the barracks, as well as Detective Gilbertson's pocket recorder. Detective Gilbertson and I were the interviewers present. This is a summary of our interview with BK and is not a verbatim transcript of the interview. A full interview transcription will be attached to this case file. Detective Gilbertson and I began by introducing ourselves and stating which agencies we represented. When I stated who I was, BK said, "You do look familiar." Detective Gilbertson and I prepared our note-taking materials, and Detective Gilbertson read BK his Miranda rights advisement. Detective Gilbertson asked BK if he understood his rights, to which he replied he did. After collecting his personal information and inquiring about any medications, Detective Gilbertson and I began to speak to him. Detective Gilbertson asked him about the SWAT operation at his house, to which he replied he was concerned about his parents and his dog. Detective Gilbertson asked him if he was going to Washington State University, to which he replied he was. We made small talk with him about sports for some time. He stated he didn't follow WSU football much, but was a basketball fan. Detective Gilbertson asked him if he had only been at WSU for one semester. BK confirmed this and said he came to WSU with his father on July 1st. He then went on to say he was a first-year PhD student in criminal justice and criminology. Detective Gilbertson asked him what the process was to apply for a PhD. He stated he applied to two places, UC Irvine and WSU. He said he was going to graduate with his master's in criminal justice from DeSales and was inspired. He then asked if it was okay to engage in small talk like we were, which we replied it was. What a know-it-all. After briefly mentioning he was strengthened by the fact that his mother and father were okay, he said he applied to the two aforementioned schools because they didn't require the GRE exam. He then spoke about the GRE for a brief time and then said he was accepted by WSU. Detective Gilbertson then asked him what led him down the road of becoming a professor. He said it was because he loved being in college and stated knowledge was far more important to him than money. He added WSU had a good program to study under and then said, "You guys know all about this, more than likely." He then asked questions about University of Idaho and other Idaho universities before stating he didn't know much about Idaho or Washington and had not left the tri-state area much. He then returned to speaking about his focus on learning and how he thought he could obtain his doctorate degree. He then said he recently returned home to see his family. Detective Gilbertson then asked him about his time at DeSales University. He spoke for some time about his time at Northampton Community College and DeSales. He then spoke about how he became interested in criminal justice and stated he thought about being a police officer but did not want to make that commitment unless he was absolutely sure. He then continued to speak about his education in universities. He also spoke more about the process to get into a PhD program and how competitive it can be. Detective Gilbertson then asked him about his move to Washington. He said he drove across the country and wanted the challenge of driving cross-country and experiencing it with his father. He then said he took a different route back home with his father for Christmas break to avoid snow. He spoke about his travels and the risks of such travels in winter. He then began to speak about the beauty of the environment and its relationship to God and a higher power. Please. We spoke about this for some time, and he said he was raised Christian, but was always a skeptic except when he was confronted with the beauty of the natural world. Detective Gilbertson asked him if he had ever been to the Pacific Northwest prior to coming to WSU, and he said he hadn't. I asked him if he and his father made any stops along their way back to Pennsylvania. He told me they visited Colorado, but the main goal was to just drive. He then told me a story about seeing an unmarked police car near Kansas City, speed up behind him, catch up to another vehicle, turn on its emergency lights, then drive away. He thought this was strange and unsure why it occurred. Detective Gilbertson then asked him about the job he mentioned. He said he was a teaching assistant. He He then talked about how busy he was and how the funding package that comes along with being a teaching assistant is what makes the extra work worth it. He then discussed ongoing projects with WSU PD and Pullman PD. He spoke more about how being a TA is essentially assisting the professors in the department. He stated he did not get to assist with teaching, with the exception of assisting with office hours. Detective Gilbertson asked him if he would be a TA again next semester, and he replied he would. He then stated he understood why we were engaging in small talk, but would appreciate it if we explained to him what he was doing there. Detective Gilbertson asked him why he thought we were there. He said he wanted Detective Gilbertson to tell him. Detective Gilbertson said we were there because of what occurred in Moscow, but did not provide any further detail. Detective Gilbertson asked him if he watched the news. He said, "I watched the news." Detective Gilbertson then asked him why he thought I looked familiar. He said he wasn't sure and stated I had a familiar face and looked like someone he used to know. Detective Gilbertson then said we were there because of what happened in November, just off the University of Idaho campus. Detective Gilbertson asked him if he knew what that was, to which he responded, "Of course." When prompted to elaborate, he said it was the incident we had been investigating for how long has it been? BK said there were probably several incidents, and then said he was aware of a homicide because of a WSU alert he received. Detective Gilbertson asked when he received the alert. He said he wasn't sure, but thought it was sometime the previous month. Detective Gilbertson confirmed that was why we were there and asked if he wanted to talk about that. He replied, "Well, I think I would need a lawyer." He then asked if we would explain to him what we were there for specifically and added he was tired. Detective Gilbertson again stated we were investigating the homicides of the 4 students and that we had questions and things we hoped he would help us understand. He sat back and said he had the utmost respect for law enforcement, but stated it was a constitutional right to speak to an attorney. Detective Gilbertson affirmed this. He then re-engaged and said the only thing he heard from Moscow was an alert that came to his phone. He then said he wanted to talk to an attorney. Detective Gilbertson said we would stop now because he said he wanted to speak to an attorney. He then asked where his parents and his dog were. He re-engaged again and asked what questions we would have for him. Detective Gilbertson then asked him again if he understood his rights. BK asked what specifically we wanted to talk to him about and the reason. I told him he invoked his Fifth Amendment rights and we were not going to ask him any further questions. He asked again for the reason he was there, but added he would like to talk to an attorney. At this point, we concluded our interview with him and left the room. Moscow Police Department Brett Payne. On Thursday, May 11, 2023, I received an email from AS containing a secure link and password to access Installment 9 from WSU. I accessed the link using the provided password and downloaded the file titled Installment 9 W blank 2 and 3 zip to my department computer. Upon opening the files, I discovered there were 2 PDF files containing 262 and 184 pages respectively. The files contain scanned pages of email correspondence, class assignments, mentor assignments, and other miscellaneous documents. Of note, there are several emails in the files which discuss BK's specific issues which led to him being terminated from the TA program and losing his funding for his PhD program. I attached the downloaded files to this case electronically. Moscow Police Department Lawrence Mowry. I was assigned the task of examining the call detail records that were obtained from AT&T pursuant to a warrant served by Corporal Brett Payne for the time frame of November 12, 2022 at 0000 hours through November 14, 2022 at 0000 hours. These records were requested for the account associated with the phone number blank, known the 8458 phone. This phone showed the subscriber as BK. I was specifically requesting to examine the records showing connectivity to cell towers between the hours of 0200 and 0600 PST, as this was the time frame surrounding the homicides at 1122 King Road. Although the records contain records for voice, data, and SMS usage in the 48-hour data set, I only located 27 data usage records in the specified time frame. To assist in mapping the location of the cellular towers and the direction of their sector antennas, and I imported the data into CATS-Viz version number 30.0.0. The 8458 phone connects with several different cell towers in Pullman, Washington between 0200 hours and 0225 hours. The phone appears to be traveling within or near the city of Pullman, Washington. At 0242 hours, the phone connects to a tower near Northeast Skyview Drive in Washington State University campus. At 0247 hours, the phone connected to a tower on Observation Drive on the Washington State University campus. In continuing to examine this data, I found approximately a 2-hour period with no interactions between the 8458 phone and the AT&T network, between 0247 and 0448 hours. The phone connects to a tower located near the Paradise Ridge, south of Moscow, Idaho at 04:48 hours. The phone connects with towers south of Moscow, Idaho, which is consistent with travel back to Pullman, Washington, utilizing the towers along the route. From my training and experience, I know cellular devices can send and receive data to cellular towers with the user's input, such as surfing the internet, or without the user's input, system data. The normal reasons for a cellular device to not show connections to a cellular tower are the device is not in range of the tower's signal, the device is physically blocked from receiving/sending, such as a Faraday bag, the device is in airplane mode, or the device is powered off. I contacted AT&T's Global Legal Demand Center and confirmed devices on the AT&T network connect at least every 60 minutes, if no user connectivity is initiated. I verified the location of several towers shown in CATSViz and confirmed their locations with the data in the call detail records. Another example of, he thinks he's so smart because he turned his phone off, but also, is it not suspicious that his phone disappears during the time frame? It's fairly obvious what was done there. So it's obviously you're not that smart. I don't remember if we've gone over this yet at this point either, or if that's coming up. But they've also stated that his phone connected to the tower that services 1122 King Road multiple times days before the crime was committed. He was going there to, scope it out multiple times beforehand, which is another thing of, dude, you think you're so smart? But they can place you there a bajillion times, checking it out beforehand. Moscow Police Department Brett Payne. On Thursday, June 8, 2023, I accessed BK's white Hyundai Elantra in order to photograph items in the trunk compartment. The items were identified as being ordered via Amazon by the same account BK used to purchase the K-bar knife with sheath. I was able to identify 3 items from the trunk compartment, which I could positively identify as the same items ordered for Amazon per the return obtained via subpoena in this case. The first item was a bottle of supplements named Amandine Vitamin D3 K2 Vegan on the Amazon return. The bottle was in the trunk compartment and was detained in a small plastic bag. The bottle's label read, Amandine Vegan D3 plus K2 Dietary Supplements. Second item I positively identified was labeled as Lead Brand Scissor Jack 1.5 tons on the Amazon return. I found a 1.5 ton scissor jack in the trunk compartment, but it did not have any brand markings. I searched the same name on Amazon and found the same item I located in the trunk compartment. It should be noted that the jack came with a ratchet handle as well. This item was booked previously. The third item I located was labeled Cartman Warning Triangle Approved on the Amazon return. I relocated a red rectangular plastic box with warning triangles inside. On the side of the box was a sticker which read Cartman. On the top of the sticker, in Cartman Warning Triangle Approved. I'm assuming meaning Department of Transportation. 3-pack new on the bottom of the sticker. I photographed these items and attached the photos to this case electronically. On Tuesday, June 13, 2023, Detective Darren Gilbertson from ISP provided me with 3 packages he obtained by ordering the items from Amazon. Detective Gilbertson stated he purchased the items in the same fashion used by BK to purchase a K-bar with sheath, a K-bar sharpener, and a bottle of supplements. I photographed each of the packages and their content along with the order paperwork Detective Gilbertson provided. The packages contained 1 K-bar straight fighting knife with a leather USMC sheath, a K-bar sharpener, and a bottle of vegan supplements. I attached all photos to this case and booked all of the items in a Moscow Police Department evidence on June 13, 2023. The paperwork was included in the package containing the knife itself. Moscow Police Department Danny Vargas. On June 7, 2023, I reached out to VS, Chief Medical Examiner for the Spokane County Medical Examiner's Office, to arrange a meeting with the Latah County Prosecutor's Team. Dr. S stated she could meet on June 28, 2023, which worked for the prosecuting team. On June 27, 2023, I met with TS, Moscow Police Department Evidence Technician, and had item number 733, in parentheses, 23M-1025, K-bar knife temporarily released to me so I could bring it to the meeting with Dr. S. I locked item number 733 into a temporary lockbox in Moscow Police Department detectives, as our meeting was on the following day. On June 28, 2023, I removed item number 733 from the lockbox in Moscow Police Department detectives and brought it with me to Spokane. On June 28, 2023, at approximately 10:30 hours, myself, along with Bill Thompson, Ashley Jennings, Jeff Nye, and Ingrid Beatty, met with Dr. S. at the Spokane County Medical Examiner's Office. Dr. S. had pre-selected several photos from each victim to go over with us so she could describe the shape of a weapon, which would have caused the injuries. I removed the K-bar knife from the sealed package and showed it to Dr. S. Dr. S stated the shape and size of the K-bar was consistent as being the weapon which could have caused the injuries on all 4 of the victims. Dr. S described how some of the wounds had 2 points on either end and how some wounds had a point on one end and a square shape at the other end. Dr. S explained how the K-bar knife could have created these wounds, depending on the depth of the injury. Dr. S explained the tip of the knife having sharp edges on either side would show a wound with the points on either end. Dr. S described a deeper wound would show a point on one side and the square on the other, and how it matched the shape of the knife blade having the single sharp edge on one side and the square edge on the other, below the tip. Dr. S pointed out some of the wounds had marks that was consistent with the guard of the K-bar knife. Dr. S described how the wounds could look different depending on the skin stretching, dynamics of the situation at the time, and the angle or position the knife was in when it was inserted and removed, and how a victim was moving or not moving at the time. Dr. S described some of the injuries depicted that the strength of the weapon itself and the force used would have been great. We concluded our meeting with Dr. S. I brought item number 733 back to Moscow Police Department and booked it back into Moscow Police Department evidence on June 28, 2023. Moscow Police Department, Brett Payne. On Wednesday, July 12, 2023, I spoke to RD, who previously called in a tip about possibly seeing BK at the Clarkston Safeway the morning of November 13, 2022. I asked D to tell me what he knew. D told me he was at the Clarkston Safeway between 9:30 and 11:30 a.m. on the morning of November 13, 2023, and noticed a man in front of him in line. D said he saw the man's face because D made a comment to the store clerk, which caused the man to turn around and look at him. D stated he didn't think anything of this encounter until he saw BK's face on the television upon his arrest. D told me he was sure the person he saw was BK, and that he was wearing a black hoodie with the hood down. D told me that was all he knew, and he wanted to make sure law enforcement was aware of it. On Tuesday, September 12, 2023, I received an email from NW, Forensic Lab Manager for the Ada County Sheriff's Office. W's assistance was requested for the analysis of possible footwear impressions left at the scene of the homicides. W sent me 2 attached documents and advised they were her notes as well as her reporting pertaining to her analysis of the footwear impressions and the comparison of those impressions to various pieces of footwear collected from BK throughout this investigation. I downloaded both of the files and attached them to this case electronically. On Wednesday, September 13, 2023, FBI Tech Specialist T forwarded me tip serial number 9237 via email. The tip was called in on August 22, 2023 to the FBI tip line. The caller, RT, advised the call taker he saw a person whom he thought was BK at 1122 King Road on 2 occasions in July of 2022. T advised he came to 1122 King Road as he was a real estate agent looking for property for clients. T stated on both occasions he saw BK and BK's father. On Wednesday, September 13, 2023, I called T on the telephone after verifying his identity via TLO. T was a licensed real estate agent living in Florida. I asked him to relate to me what he reported to the FBI. T told me he drove his nephew, T, to the western U.S. from Florida and his nephew was dying from cancer. T advised that he came through Moscow and saw a sign for property for sale, so he followed the sign to 1122 King Road to look at the property for clients. While he was parked out front, T said a brown Jeep-type pickup pulled in the parking lot driven by an older man with a red beard. T said he then saw a male who he was sure was BK get up from the back seat. T and the driver engaged in small talk, and T said he walked to the back door to speak with the tenants, but no one answered. T said he left the area with his nephew shortly after that. T said he returned to 1122 King Road on his way back to Florida. T said he was parked in front of the house when a white car, which he described as the same one they've shown on television, drove by the house. T said he was sure the driver was BK's father and BK was in the passenger seat. T said the vehicle sped away and he did not see where it went. I asked T if he remembered when this took place. T asked me what month that the homicides occurred. I told him it was November, to which he replied it must have been around then. T previously told the FBI he was in Moscow in July. T then told me his nephew passed away a short time after he returned from his trip. I asked T when his nephew passed away. T told me his nephew passed away 8 years ago. I thanked T for his time and told him I would call him with further questions if needed. At this time, there is nothing to corroborate T's statement based off of inconsistencies in his timeline. Further investigation will be completed if necessary. This is a summary of my conversation with T. Our conversation was not recorded. I don't know what to make of this because obviously it's not accurate. But I don't know if it's just some person thinking they're funny and leaving a fake tip, which we will get into shortly. There were quite a few questionable tips that were made. Or if he genuinely somehow misunderstood the timeline and he thought this took place like 8 years ago, or like was actually trying to be helpful but like was really just not grasping. I feel like that's really unlikely that you wouldn't, like, 8 years ago. I don't know. This is so weird to me. I'm really leaning towards that he just is making something up. And if that's the case and they're able to prove it, I definitely think something should be done about that, because you can't interfere in an investigation and give false tips. It's not okay. Moscow Police Department Danny Vargas. Early on in the investigation, after BK had been identified as the suspect, I did an initial search for the following names/phone numbers throughout several accounts belonging to the victims: his first name, his last name, his middle name, blank blank, and Papa Rogers. I did not find any of the above terms related to BK in the following accounts listed below: Kaylee iCloud, Kaylee Snapchat, Kaylee's iPhone BFU, Kaylee's Gmail, Kaylee Yahoo, Kaylee Instagram, Kaylee Facebook, Bethany Instagram, Dylan Instagram, Ethan Instagram, Xana Instagram, Maddie Facebook, Xana Facebook, Ethan Facebook, Bethany Facebook, Dylan Facebook, JD Facebook. My notes are attached electronically to this case file. Moscow Police Department Brett Payne. On Tuesday, October 10, 2023, I met with WSU student K.O., hereto referred as L, in reference to this case. I was accompanied by FBI agent Hill for this interview, as well as FBI interpreter who was present via phone call, as L is from blank. This is a summary of my interview with L and is not a verbatim representation of the interview. The interview was recorded and attached to this case digitally. L was interviewed once previously by FBI agent Zakowski in December of 2022. L was a former teaching assistant with BK and shared an office with him for the fall semester of 2022 at WSU. I began by asking L to tell me how he met him. L stated they were both TAs for the criminology program at WSU and shared an office in Wilson Short Hall. L considered BK a friend and stated he thought he was very intelligent but also selfish. L said he would often mislead him when it came to their shared work and would have L complete work meant for BK. L said BK came to his dorm room on one occasion around the time of the homicides. L was unsure of the exact date. After L asked him for a ride to class. L also added BK began to talk much more than usual after the homicides. L characterized BK's conversations as those coming from someone who wanted to vent. L stated BK attempted to use his authority as a TA to inappropriately interact with female students. L stated he thought BK wanted a girlfriend, and added they talked about BK wanting a girlfriend on many occasions. L said BK told him he might lose his TA position over an issue with Dr. S. BK asked L to help fight the allegations, but L stated he refused to help him. L characterized BK as a dishonest person. To support this, L stated he spoke to BK in late December of 2022, and BK said he was packing his bags to catch a flight to Pennsylvania. L later learned BK had been back in Pennsylvania for some time and had driven back with his father. L then told us about some injuries he witnessed on BK's face and hands. L was unsure of the date, but stated he thought he noticed the injuries on 2 separate occasions in October and November of 2022. L stated one injury was a large scratch on BK's face, which L described as looking like the scratches from fingernails. L said he also saw wounds to BK's knuckles on 2 separate occasions. When L asked him about what happened to him, he replied that he had been in a car accident. L also stated that he was frequently 20 minutes late to their classes. I asked L what he and BK would talk about. L said BK liked to discuss his area of study, which was criminal decision-making and burglary-type crimes. Special Agent Hill and I advised L to reach out if he wished to add anything to what he told us, and concluded our interview. Moscow Police Department Danny Vargas. X-rays of victims. On February 22, 2024, I received a thumb drive from coroner Kathy Moppat, which contained X-rays taken of Chapin, Kernodle, Mogan, and Gonzalez at the Spokane coroner's office during the autopsies. I booked the thumb drive into Moscow Police Department evidence. On February 27, 2024, I downloaded the X-rays for Gonzalez, Mogan, Chapin, and Kernodle, which were shared via OneDrive from L.A., Spokane County Medical Examiner's Office, to Ashley Jennings, Latah County Prosecutor's Office. I copied the X-rays to a DVD and booked the DVD into Moscow Police Department evidence. I had previously booked into a thumb drive with images provided to me by Coroner Moppat. The images were thumbnails of the actual image. Moscow Police Department Brett Payne. On Friday, March 1st, 2024, I received an email from FBI geologist I.S. containing the report completed reference, the soil found on the shovel recovered from BK's White Elantra. I attached the PDF of this report to the Spillman case file. The summary of the report is as follows. The soil on the shovel is consistent with soil found in the Moscow area based off of S's analysis. The report also stated the soil was not from anywhere east of Moscow. This finding also excluded Pennsylvania as a likely source for the soil. The report stated soil from the shovel displayed characteristics of soil carried to the area via a water source, though this could have been recent or at any point in the area's geologic history. During conversation with S, he stated the exact area the sample came from would likely not be attainable due to the prominence of the mineral compounds from the sample that are found throughout the Moscow area. On Friday, March 8, 2024, I received an email from P.A. Thompson referenced the receipt of a phone survey. The recipient, N.B., stated someone called her and began to ask questions about the B.K. trial to include questions about how B felt about the case. See below for B's information provided via emailed Word document. Phone number blank. Lasted 18 minutes. Stated they were a company performing a survey among the community in relation to the BK case. They verified if I was a Latah County resident and which city I considered myself a resident. Here's a small list of the questions that I can remember. These questions are not verbatim, but of general sense on what I can remember being asked. Have I read, listened to, or seen any newsreels regarding BK and or the families of the victims? Have I read, listened to, or seen any television or movie documentaries regarding BK and or the families of the victims? Were you aware of any television movies or documentaries concerning BK on sources like Netflix? What sources have you listened to, read, or seen as a source of information? Can you name the specific newspapers, news stations, or source of information that you received your knowledge of the case? Have I heard or participated in any rumors surrounding BK, the victims, or their families? I responded no, that I've heard rumors regarding law enforcement involved in the case. In a general statement, how would you describe how the community has been affected by the murders? Has the murders caused anyone you know or yourself any excess stress? Do you feel the community has felt an excess of stress since the murders? Do you know a student that attends the University of Idaho? Do you know or are related to law enforcement and or anyone directly involved in the case? In a general statement, do you feel BK could receive a fair trial? Do you think if you were asked to serve on a jury, would you be able to serve fairly, weighing the evidence and the case presented? Have you ever driven past the residence in which the murders were committed? Did you ever read, watch, or listen to any reports of BK's arrest in Pennsylvania? How would you describe how closely you've been following the BK case? Calling it the BK case is just absolutely disrespectful to the victims. I can't remember much more, but I felt the questions were sometimes redundant, just changing some words here and there, and they were focused on my personal opinion and my opinion of the community surrounding both the victims, their families, and BK. There were several questions regarding if I felt BK could get a fair trial and if I felt I could impartially or fairly sit on a jury. The questions were just worded differently. That was the general sense they were trying to feel out from my responses. End Word document. On Monday, March 11, 2024, I received another report from P.A. Thompson stating J.M. received a similar phone call. I called Mrs. M. and learned the following. The business that called M. went by the name Research Strategies, Inc. The company's website, researchstrategiesinc.com, states they conduct various types of surveys to include public opinion surveys and post-trial jury analysis. The phone number provided to Miss M shows up on the Better Business Bureau website for the same company out of Alabama. I checked TLO and found the number used to be associated with a woman in Alabama who passed away in 2011, which further lends it to being the correct number, just reassigned to this business. I spoke to Mrs. M, who stated she received a call approximately 4:51 p.m. on 3/10/2024. The first question she was asked was if she was a Latah County resident. There were several questions that followed which asked generic questions about trials and the criminal justice system. Then she stated the woman asked her specifically if she was aware of the BK trial. Mrs. M stated she refused to answer, asked the woman who she worked for, Research Strategies with the number provided, who was paying for the survey, and asked for her supervisor. The woman gave her the company's number and stated she was unaware of who was responsible for the survey. Mrs. M also stated the number the woman called from was blank. This number is not found in TLO and is likely a Google Voice type number not associated with a person. This is also the number that called B. Mrs. M stated she posted to her Facebook page asking if anyone else had received similar calls. She stated several people in the Potluck area had received calls from the same number that called her, but most were not answered. I asked her to keep me posted if she became aware of any further information. My conclusions are this is a legitimate survey requested via the company. Open source searches suggest a study like this would cost into tens of thousands of dollars. I called the number provided for Research Strategies, Inc. and was directed to leave a message. The recording also stated I had reached Research Strategies, Inc. Moscow Police Department, Brett Payne. On Wednesday, March 13, 2024, I received an email from Captain Blaker, who still receives voicemail tips references to this case. Captain Blaker sent me 2 tips for additional follow-up. The first tip was called in by KC. C stated she thought she had matched with BK in September or October of 2022 on Tinder. I called C and asked her to elaborate on her voicemail. C stated she signed up for Tinder in September or October of 2022, but she was unable to match with anyone in her area. C stated she paid for the additional Tinder feature, which allowed her to move a pin to anywhere in the country to see if she could match with someone. C stated she matched with BK a short time later and began to talk to him. C stated BK told her he was a criminology student at WSU. The two communicated via Tinder and planned for BK to visit C when he came home for Christmas break that year. C then told me she had a friend who had been murdered in her town a couple years prior. She said she discussed this with BK. The conversation turned to horror movies and which ones C liked the most. C told him that she liked Rob Zombie Halloween movies. To this, C said BK asked what she thought would be the worst way to die. C said she thought it would be a knife. C said he then asked her something to the effect of, like a K-bar? C said she didn't know what that was and had to Google it. C said she eventually stopped talking to him because his questions made her uncomfortable. C said when BK was arrested, she recognized his photo and remembered the comment about the K-bar knife. C said she attempted to call the tip line, but I have been unable to verify whether or not C called the Moscow Police Department tip line. There is no record of C calling the FBI tip line. C said she no longer has access to her Tinder profile and could not get her user ID. This would be needed to compare the Tinder records located in BK's phone. At this time, there is nothing to corroborate C's tip. This has since been proven to be not true. So, again, someone giving a false tip. Because why? I don't know. The second tip was in reference to a blank driver, SS, who thought he saw BK. I called S and asked him to tell me what he saw. S said he delivers packages to the area of Pullman, where BK resided during 2022. S said he recognized BK and had seen him while delivering packages to the area on prior occasions. S told me on the occasion he referenced in his tip, he noticed a man dressed in all black with boxing or elf shoes, standing on a footpath behind blank Terreview Drive. This footpath provided an unobstructed view of the apartment blank, where S said the female tenants would be visible through a large window. S said seeing the man who he said looked like BK, from what he could see, was unusual, given the location. S said he was not positive that the man was BK, but he resembled BK's appearance. S told me he spoke to an FBI investigator early on, but wanted to make sure the information was passed on. I concluded my phone interview with S and thanked him. Neither of the 2 conversations above were recorded. On March 6, 2024, I conducted a follow-up on a tip from the FBI database. The tip stated a male, RV, had posted in a hiking group on Facebook that he found a K-bar knife with a sheath while hiking in the Cascade Mountains. Investigation into this area of the country did not yield a link to any known travel path of BK for the timeline in question. In addition, the knife was found with a sheath. I attempted to get in contact with V using the numbers provided by the FBI tip as well as TILO. None of the numbers were viable and I was unable to contact V. This tip is closed as of this report. On Thursday, April 11, 2024, I contacted FA by phone in reference to a tip in the FBI system. The tip stated a friend of A may have photos of the victims, in this case from the night prior to the homicide. I spoke to A on the phone. I did not record my conversation, and this is a summary of my interview with A. I asked A to tell me what he remembers from the night before the homicides. A told me he saw the victims at the White's party that had been previously mentioned in this chase. A told me he saw Chapin and Kernodle at approximately 2,000 hours before they went home. I asked A if he had taken any photos. A told me he did not, but he remembered EV, blank sorority member, was there taking pictures. A told me he thought she might have photos that would show the victims. I asked A if there was anything else he could remember from that night, and he said there was not. I thanked him for his time and concluded my conversation with A. I attempted to call V, but was only able to leave a voicemail. A short time later, V left me a return voicemail stating she was out of the area and would call me back when she was available. I will interview V upon her return as well as add any photos she may have to this case. On Friday, April 12, 2024, I met with KD at the Moscow Police Department in reference to a tip D had called in during this investigation, wherein D said he was with some of the victims the night before the homicides and wished to provide his whereabouts. I recorded my interview with D and burned them into a CD, which I booked into Moscow Police Department evidence. The following is a summary of my interview with D. I began by asking D to tell me what his background with the victims was. D told me he hung out with Kernodle frequently during his freshman year of college prior to Kernodle dating Chapin. D told me he was in a circle of friends with the other victims and casually saw Frankel in the fall of 2022. D later told me he spent the night with Frankel on approximately 3 prior occasions. I asked D if he remembered any of the victims telling him about any strange occurrences. He told me he did not. I asked him if he went to any of the parties at 1122 King Road. D told me he did and that there were roughly 20 people at the parties when he went. I asked D if he and the other party attendees would have noticed someone unwelcome in the party. D told me they would have, and that did not occur at any point when he was there. I asked D to tell me what he remembered about what he did the day prior to the homicides. D told me he went to 1122 King Road the morning of 11/12/2022, at approximately 1000 hours, to have a couple of drinks with the residents prior to going to the football game. D said they all went to the Whites for a party prior to going to the football tailgate. D said they left that party and went to the football tailgate at halftime for the game. He was unsure of what time, and stayed out in the parking lot. I asked D what he did after the tailgate. He told me the victims all left and he went back to blank, his fraternity. D said he ate some food and went to sleep for the night. I asked D what he remembered about the next morning. D said a fraternity brother woke him up around noon to check on him since he had stayed at 1122 King Road prior, and the vandal alert had been issued for homicides there. D said from then on, he and his fraternity brothers stayed in the house together until they all left town the next day. I asked him if Frankel told him about anything that happened. He said she did not, and he did not ask Frankel about it. I asked D if there was anything else he thought I should know, and he told me there was not. I thanked D for his time, provided him my business card, and asked him to call me with any further concerns or questions. On Thursday, April 18, 2024, I received an email from IS, Geologist FBI. The report details the findings of the exam of the pollen contents of the soil found in the shovel, as well as its comparisons to the samples sent in for comparison. The report states none of the samples are a match with the soil from the shovel. Additionally, the report states the soil from the shovel contained high amounts of pine pollen, and single pine pollen grains from plants that are not naturally distributed in Moscow. Basswood and red maple were found in the soil recovered from the shovel. Item 8-1, however, are both commonly planted ornamental species. I attached this report digitally to the case file. On Thursday, April 25, 2024, I received a note from Moscow Police Department reception to call CT, blank 1943, in reference to this case. I called T, who agreed to come to Moscow Police Department to speak to me. I spoke to T in interview number 1. This is a summary of my conversation with T, and not a verbatim transcription. I asked T what made her decide to speak to me on this date. T told me her good friends had convinced her to come talk to Moscow Police Department to make sure what she knew was at least conveyed to law enforcement. I asked T to tell me what she knew. T told me she and her husband went to the Costco in Clarkston, Washington on 11/13/2022 to pick up new glasses for T. She told me they left Costco around 1400 to 1430 hours that afternoon and drove north across Red Wolf Bridge. T told me when they turned eastbound on the highway from the bridge, she saw a man walking in the grassy area between the river and the highway. T stated she thought this was strange, as there was nothing for anyone to be doing there. T stated the man was walking eastbound and noticed her staring at him. T said the man looked up at her and then appeared to look down and avoid her gaze. I asked T what the man looked like. T told me she had seen much of the news coverage regarding BK, and that was what comes to her mind, but that she was not certain he was the person she saw. I asked her if the man she saw would match BK's appearance, and she said it would. I asked T what the man was wearing. She told me she thought it was strange, as the man was wearing nice clothes. I asked if business casual was a fair classification, and she said it was. T stated she did not see a car the man was walking to, and thought that was strange. T said they drove away, and that was all she knew. T had drawn a map of the location. I booked the drawing into Moscow Police Department evidence. On Tuesday, April 30th, 2024, I drove the area T described with Captain Blaker. The area T described as where she saw the man is not visible from the highway once you turn east off the bridge. Anyone walking in the area would have to be very near the guardrail, as the hill is relatively steep and drops away from the highway almost immediately. I called T back on Thursday, May 2nd, 2024, and asked her to clarify. T told me the man was on the hill roughly in the middle. T called me back a short time later and told me the man may have been further east along the hillside. I will continue to validate whether or not T's recollection of events is plausible. On 6/20/2024, I received an email containing a voice tip reference in this case. I listened to the attached file. The woman stated her name was HH, with a phone number of blank. H stated she had information that would clear BK of the homicides. She did not state what this information was and requested a phone call. On 7/1/2024, I attempted to call H to interview her about her statements. H did not answer, but there was an option to leave a voicemail, though the message did not state what the number belonged to. I left a voicemail with my work cell phone number and identified who I was. I requested H to call me back. At the time of this report, I have not received a phone call from H. I will author an additional report if I am able to contact H. On June 29, 2024, I attempted to contact SG at blank in reference to a tip G had emailed to the tip line. G claimed to have information about BK and a man named NT. G claimed to have tangible proof BK was framed. G did not answer when I called her on 6/29/2024, so I left a voicemail. I did not receive a return phone call from G. I attempted to call G again on 7/30/2024. Upon calling, someone answered the phone, did not say anything, and then hung up quickly before I could speak. At the time of this writing, I am unable to contact G. I will investigate further if I am able to get in touch with her. You're just like, why are we wasting people's time by giving false tips? On Tuesday, July 30th, 2024, I contacted TJ from Clarkston, Washington. Jay emailed a tip to Chief Dallinger saying she had information about seeing BK the morning after the homicides. I called Jay and asked her to tell me what she knew. I did not record our conversation. Jay stated she was in Clarkston on 11/13/2022 at approximately 1000 hours and went to the Albertsons there to pick up coffee and donuts. Jay said she had seen the U of I alert on Facebook as she was standing in line and called her boyfriend to tell him about it. Jay said it was at this point she noticed the man in front of her, who she thought could have been BK. Jay said the man was wearing khaki pants, brown shoes, a salmon-colored button-up shirt, a surgical COVID-type mask, and purple surgical gloves. Jay said she didn't think anything of it at the time, but thought she should let law enforcement know after seeing the photos of BK. Jay did not have further information regarding the incident. I thanked her for her information and ended our conversation. Moscow Police Department, Lawrence Mowry. On July 22, 2024, I transferred 4 items previously secured in the Moscow Police Department Digital Forensic Lab to the Moscow Police Department Evidence Room. I received these items from the FBI and they were placed into a secure storage area upon receipt. No further analysis or extractions were completed on the devices as the extractions were previously completed by the FBI and that data had been placed onto hard drives and provided separately. These 4 items were listed as Samsung phone belonging to BK, Samsung hard drive belonging to BK, Samsung and Seagate hard drives belonging to BK, Acer laptop belonging to BK. Moscow Police Department, Brett Payne. On August 21, 2024, I received an email from Deputy Prosecutor Ashley Jennings containing a link to a recent inmate transport wherein one inmate mentioned BK. I accessed the secure link and watched the video. The male inmate is completely redacted, so we'll call him 1, and then there's a female inmate that we'll call 2. The male inmate, 1, was being transported to southern Idaho and was talking to a female inmate, 2. During the conversation, 1 stated he was housed in maximum security, to which 2 replied, "Oh, you were in there with BK?" 1 stated he was. 2 asked, "How is he?" 1 stated, "A fucking weirdo." 1 continued to say, if he wasn't worried about further legal repercussions, he would have physically assaulted BK. 2 then asked 1 if BK did it, referencing the homicides. 1 affirmed this statement and added he had pretty good judgment of people and that BK's eyes tell a story. This was the extent of the conversation about BK. Based off the limited information conveyed by 1 and the fact that he did not mention speaking to BK about the homicides, there will be no further follow-up conducted with 1. On Monday, September 16, 2024, I spoke to blank. Blank was an inmate at the Latah County Jail at the time and had been housed next to BK since August of 2024 until BK's transport to Idaho County on September 15, 2024, to Ada County on September 15, 2024. I was made aware by Detective Vargas that blank spoke about BK while on a phone call with his mother. I responded to Latah County Jail and spoke to blank. I began by asking blank what he thought of BK having lived next to him. Blank told me he was highly intelligent and polite for the most part. Blank told me he would often question him about his past criminal offenses and why he was in the maximum security wing of the jail. I asked Blank what he thought of BK's intelligence. Blank stated he was the smartest person he had encountered while in confinement. Blank told me BK quickly became annoying because of some of his habits. He told me BK would wash his hands dozens of times each day and would spend 45 minutes to an hour in the shower. I asked Blank if he slept at night. He told me he would be awake almost all night and would only take a nap during the day. Blank said he could hear BK moving all around at night, which also annoyed him. I asked Blank if BK ever lost his temper. He told me on one occasion BK was video chatting with his mother, which blank said he did for hours each day. While blank was watching sports, blank said, "You suck," to one of the players on the team, at which point BK immediately got up and put his face to the bars and aggressively asked if blank was talking about him or his mother. Blank said this was the only time BK lost his temper. I asked blank if BK had mentioned anything about the crimes he was charged with. Blank said BK did not mention his alleged offenses at all. Blank also told me BK was excited to move to Ada County. Blank stated he had served time at Ada County and noted he did not think BK would like to be there. I thanked blank for speaking with me and advised him to notify the Latah County detention deputies if he remembered anything else he wished to tell me. On Monday, November 11, 2024, I was notified via an email from Sergeant Gunderson that a woman named HH had called Whitcomb with information relating to the case. More specifically, she alleged she could exonerate BK. H hung up with dispatch prior to them gathering further information. The call notes were as follows. Caller is advising that she is trying to reach the attorney for BK. She was a mandated reporter/victim advocate and is advising that she has information that would prove his innocence. She sent the attorney a letter to reach someone that can confirm they are representing BK. Attorney/Ann Taylor Law Offices. I called H when I returned to duty on November 14, 2024. I advised her of who I was and asked if she could relate the information she claimed to have. H told me she sent a letter to Ann Taylor's office with the information and would not disclose what she knew to me. I advised her it was my obligation to learn of possible exculpatory evidence. She told me she had never met BK or spoken to him, but she knew he was not the person who committed the murders. I attempted to explain why it was important for me to know the information she had, but H would only tell me to do a FOIA request so you can learn my maiden name. She also stated if I did so, the FBI would immediately contact me. I asked her if she had contacted the FBI, to which she replied she had not, but they would know as soon as I searched her name. H then said she did not want any further involvement and hung up on me. Based off of H's inability or unwillingness to offer any information to be substantiated or investigated further, there is no further avenue to proceed reference to this call. On Friday, December 2nd, 2024, MM came into Moscow Police Department and requested to speak to me in reference to a tip concerning the homicides. I spoke to M in the police department lobby. I did not record our conversation. M began by sliding me a note that asked if Moscow Police Department was looking for a second person who could be responsible for the homicides. The note described a male, and the bottom said if Moscow Police Department was not looking for another person, to slide the note back to M and she would leave. I told M it was our duty to investigate tips that could result in exculpatory information. M reluctantly slid me another stack of handwritten letters. I read most of these letters and learned they concerned ZF. The letters described M's blank. The letters described how F had lived near 1122 King Road approximately 6 months prior to the homicides, and had made comments to M about how the parties kept him up at night. M also wrote F had behaved strangely after the homicides and had injuries to his hands. The rest of the letters concerned F's other behavior and suspected hacking activities according to M. M also stated she gave consent for her DNA kits she submitted in reference to a past unrelated report from August of 2022 to be used. In talking with M, I learned F's strange behavior, not talking to M for extended periods of time, showing her memes at strange times, riding his scooter to Pullman, had been ongoing for several years prior to the homicides. M seemed concerned that F had psychotic tendencies and made her nervous at times. M stated F wore gloves almost always and had wounds on his hands and face. On more than one occasion, which she stated were from scooter crashes. Aside from the fact that F lived near 1122 King Road, I later confirmed he lived at blank until June of 2022 and behaved strangely, and did not have further reason to suspect F as being involved. She was mostly concerned about his ongoing strange behavior. I told M if his behavior ever made her fear for her life to call 911. She said she would do so. I thanked M for her time, and she left the letters with me, which I have attached to this case. Based off of M's statements and the lack of corroboration for F being involved in this crime, I will not be investigating further. Moscow Police Department, TS. On Friday, January 24th, at approximately 0750 hours, I arrived at the Moscow Police Department to start my shift. When I reached my door, I could hear an electronic beeping noise. Upon entering, I determined the noise was an alarm sounding from the evidence refrigerator unit. The digital temperature display read 60 degrees Fahrenheit. When I left work the day before, Thursday, January 23rd, at 1200 hours, there was no alarm sounding. The evidence freezer, which is a separate unit, was not affected. I immediately contacted my supervisor, Captain Hathaway. Captain Hathaway recommended I transfer the items stored in this refrigerator to our secure outbuilding where other evidence is kept, due to the lower temperatures outside. I turned off the heating units inside the storage area and opened the large garage door to allow the inside temperature to drop quickly. The outside temperature was freezing that morning, and within 10 minutes the inside temperature dropped below 50 degrees, which is the lowest number on the thermostat. All items were transferred by 0800 hours. At approximately 12:30 hours on the same day, Captain Hathaway brought a new 20 cubic feet refrigerator to the outbuilding, which he plugged in and set the temperature. An hour or so later, I checked the temperature of this refrigerator. The thermostat read 40 degrees. I transferred all the items to this refrigerator where they will be temporarily stored until the primary refrigerator unit is repaired. No DNA extractions were stored in this evidence refrigerator. Those are stored in the evidence freezer. Below is a list of the items affected that were being stored in the evidence freezer. If you want to see the full list of the items that were in that fridge, you can look at the files yourself. There is about 639 items, so I'm not going to read through them all. It looks like a lot of them are blood swabs, and it seems all of the swabs that we talked about in the previous video from the autopsies were in there, like the head hair, the nail clippings as well, some other DNA swabs, nail clippers, earplugs, used napkins, flossers, Q-tips, lollipop stick, animal hair, shower hair, drain hair. Hate to be the person who had to pull that up. Pillow hair, pillow swab, vehicle swabs, gear shift swab, just a bunch of swabs and things to be tested. But if you want to see the exact list of every single item, you can go ahead and check that out yourself. Moscow Police Department, Danny Vargas. On April 3rd, 2025, I assisted TS and the prosecution team with reviewing the evidence in this case. The question was brought up if an Amandian vegan D3 plus K2 vitamin supplement bottle, which had been seen in several photographs, had been booked into evidence, and S stated it had not. S checked with Detective Payne and was informed the vitamin bottle was still located in the trunk of BK's white Elantra, MPD ID number 23M-0204. I broke the evidence seal on the driver's side door of the Elantra and opened the trunk with a release lever, also breaking the evidence seal in the trunk. I located the Amandian D3 K2 vitamin bottle in the trunk and placed in a plastic Ziploc baggie. I collected the bottle out of the trunk, counted the soft gel capsules in the bottle, 22 capsules out of 120, and booked the bottle into MPD evidence. Placed new evidence seals on the driver's side door and trunk of the vehicle. I took photos of the seals and of the bottle and copied the photos to a DVD and booked the DVD into MPD evidence. Item booked: Amandian Vegan D3 plus K2 dietary supplements, 125 mcg vitamins D3 5000 IU over 100 mcg vitamin K2 as K2 Vital, 120 vegan soft gels, 22 capsules remaining. Moscow Police Department, Dustin Blaker. On May 22, 2025, I received an email from Prosecutor Bill Thompson with a request for contact from a L.A. L wanted to report her daughter E.A. and one of her friends, A.N., saw photos of them on Dateline from the latest special in reference to the Moscow murders. I contacted L on May 22, 2025, and she responded and stated she would be available on May 23, 2025, but I was not able to contact her on that date. On May 29, 2025, I called L and spoke to her by phone. Elle told me her daughter, E, watched the Dateline special, and when they were talking about photos of WSU students, on BK's phone, E was able to identify several of the photos of her and one of her friends, A, as being photos reported to have been found on BK's phone. I asked Elle if I could talk to E, and she provided E her phone. E told me the following. E was a student at WSU in the fall of 2022 and was in a class where BK was a TA. E was in a class with her friend, A. A was interviewed by ISP Detective Jacob Schwecke on March 2, 2023. E told me she had never talked to BK during the class, but he did sit in close proximity to her on the rare occasions he would attend class. E told me she thought BK was socially awkward but was not able to provide me with any other information about him. I asked E how she knew the photos were of her and A. E told me she watched the Dateline episode and she was able to tell the photos which she believed had been taken off her Instagram account. E told me during 2022 her account was public and that was possibly how BK found her photos. E was not able to provide me any other information related to this case. On June 26, 2025, I searched through BK's vehicle looking for the following items which were on his Amazon purchase history, ordered on 6/20/2022. I previously looked up all of the items ordered and had a photo of what the products look like. Lead brand scissor jack, 1.5 tons. 3,307 pounds, capacity ratchet, handle saving, strength design. EP Auto 14-inch heavy-duty universal lug wrench, 4-way cross wrench. Dorman 926-021 spare tire for select Hyundai/Kia models. Worksite tire inflator air compressor portable, 20-volt cordless tire pump, 150 psi with digital pressure gauge, rechargeable Li-ion battery, and 12-volt car power adapter. Orkish 70-piece tire repair kit, heavy-duty tire plug kit, flat tire repair kit, tire patches, tire patch kits, puncture repair kit, 70 pieces. Carmen warning triangle, Department of Transportation approved, identical to United States FMVSS 571.125 reflective warning road safety triangle kit, pack of 3. TS Moscow Police Department evidence technician unlocked the secure garage where BK's Hyundai Elantra was being stored. I took photos of the vehicle and the intact evidence seals prior to entering the vehicle. I opened the driver's side door and opened the trunk using the trunk release lever, breaking both the driver's side door and trunk evidence seals. I took photos of the trunk and items in the trunk. I removed all the items from inside the trunk. I located the following items in the trunk, which matched the Amazon purchased items, and took photos of them. No brand, 70 pieces, tire repair kit, heavy-duty tire plug kit, flat tire repair kit, tire patch kits, puncture repair kit, 70 pieces in a black case. Cartman warning triangle, Department of Transportation approved, identical to United States FMVSS 571.125 reflective warning road safety triangle kit, pack of 3 in a red plastic case. No brand, scissor jack, 1.5 tons. I located a brand new spare kit in the trunk which did not have a brand name on it. There was a barcode sticker on the back of the rim with the product number 926-016. I searched the internet for this item number and was directed to parsgeek.com. Dorman spare tire 2011 to 2017 Hyundai Accent. I searched the internet for Dorman 926-021 spare tire for 2011 to 2019 Hyundai Elantra and located a photo of the product on partsgeek.com. Both 926-016 and 926-021 photos from partsgeek.com were identical to the spare tire located in the trunk. I took multiple photos of the spare tire and left it in the trunk. I did not find the following items in the trunk. 3,307 pounds capacity ratchet, handle saving strength design, purchased with the scissor jack. EP Auto 14-inch heavy-duty universal lug wrench, 4-way cross wrench. Worksite tire inflator air compressor portable 20-volt cordless tire pump, 150 psi with digital pressure gauge, rechargeable Li-ion battery, and 12-volt car power adapter. I placed all the items I had removed from the trunk with the exception of the scissor jack, Cartman warning triangles, and the tire repair kit back into the trunk of BK's car. I closed the trunk and the driver's side door and placed the signed evidence seals on both. I took photos of the vehicle and the evidence seals. I booked the items removed from BK's trunk in a Moscow Police Department evidence. S and I looked through the evidence which had already been removed from BK's vehicle when first searched in Pennsylvania and located the following. Both the 3,307-pound capacity ratchet, mentioned prior, and the EP Auto 14-inch heavy-duty universal lug wrench, mentioned prior. I can read that description 3 times. I opened item number 23M-0207 looking for one of the above items and did not locate either. I resealed the item. The one Amazon purchased item which was not located in BK's vehicle was the worksite tire inflator air compressor portable 20-volt cordless tire pump, 150 psi with digital pressure gauge, rechargeable Li-ion battery, and 12-volt car power adapter. I downloaded all the photos taken of the items, copied them to a DVD, and booked the DVD into Moscow Police Department evidence. Moscow Police Department, Danny Vargas. On June 26, 2025, I reached out to Pullman Police Department Records Technician, RR, and requested any reports, charging documents, and all recordings involving M. date of birth, 1980, from June 1, 2022 through May 31, 2025. I informed R I had located the following reports involving N and Spillman related to PPD. Pullman Police Department. Little section redacted. R responded and provided me with a link to GovQA where I downloaded all of the reports, body cam videos, and other recordings provided. I reviewed the body camera footage from Dr. and the following video, Axon Flex 2, 2024-9-4, 2050 MP4, at approximately 08:30 minutes into the video, M talks about having to testify in the upcoming murder trial involving the 4 college girls because she is the DoorDash driver. M's voice is muffled, but it sounds like she says, "I saw B there. I parked right next to him." Moscow PD. On June 26, 2025, I contacted MPD Property/Records Coordinator MA and requested any reports, charging documents, and all records involving MMM. Date of birth, 1980, from June 1st, 2022 through May 31st, 2025. I informed A that I had located the following reports involving M in Spillman related to Moscow Police Department. Redacted section. A replied and provided me with the 2 reports. No recordings were provided for the reports. Whitman County Sheriff's Office. On June 26, 2025, I contacted Whitman County Sheriff's Office Records Technician, SM, and requested any reports, charging documents, and all recordings involving M. Date of birth, 1980. From June 1st, 2022 through May 31st, 2025. I informed M I had located the following reports involving M in Spillman related to Whitman County Sheriff's Office. Redacted section. M responded and provided me with all the copies of the 4 reports. No recordings were provided for the reports. I downloaded all the reports and recordings provided by the 3 agencies and copied them to several DVDs. All of the reports are copied onto DVD number 1. The videos provided by PPD were divided amongst 3 DVDs due to their size. The video described above, Axon Flex 2 9/4/2024 2050 MP4, is copied onto DVD number 3, labeled PPD Axon Video. PPD Axon Video M. McMichaels 9/4/2024, which I'm guessing they forgot to redact the poor DoorDash driver's name. I booked the DVDs into Moscow Police Department evidence. That is the final file we have thus far. I don't know if there's going to be more released. Obviously, I'm sure it takes a while to go through and redact things. I'm sure there's things that they're obviously just not going to release to us, which is fine, because if it's not our business, it's not our business. So I guess we'll see where things go from here, if anything else is released. If there is anything else released, I will absolutely do another one of these. I mean, because everything kind of at this point leaves out at essentially the trial. So maybe they'll release some documents regarding the plea deal or anything. Maybe, maybe not. But yeah, that is everything. I think for the people who were like accusing them of not doing anything because they just weren't releasing it to the public for, again, like I said in my first video, obvious reasons, because they never release what they have to the public. You can't let the suspect know where you are before you get them in custody. And before a trial, it's none of our business because you can't taint a jury pool. But I hope that these documents, which amongst all of the ones I've read to you, even some of them I know probably include like technical things that not everyone would be interested in, but I personally find all these documents incredibly fascinating, even the things like little warrant things here and there. I mentioned in my last video, if I didn't do this for a living, I wasn't a makeup artist, I didn't film these videos for a living, I would absolutely be a forensic investigator. The like science behind everything, the part where they were talking about testing the dirt that was on the shovel and figuring out what region it came from, like, blew my mind. That is so cool to me, just how all of the investigative work works. So personally, I was really interested in all these files, but as I said, I didn't read all of them because there's some of them that were like really technical, and we would have been here for probably 4 parts had I read everything. So I just included the main important information. But I think with all these search warrants and all the things that they said they looked into just from these files, from only what we know from this, I think that really shows that they did know what they were doing. Obviously, they're a smaller police department. They probably weren't super equipped to handle this, but the Idaho State Police and the FBI were involved in this, so I think they really played a part in making sure everything was handled well. And I mean, it's hard to deal with a case like this with so many eyes on it too, and people constantly nitpicking and then feeling the need to call in with false reports, which is absolutely shameful. But yeah, I think these documents show a good example of the work they put into this, and I hope that shows the naysayers and the people who were complaining that they had stuff, they just weren't telling us for a reason. All right, so more thoughts. God, I don't even know where to start. I have so many things to say. First of all, inmate 163214 is an absolute loser. Amongst other things, he's a monster. He's clearly a sociopath, but truly he is such a loser that he thinks of himself so highly that he thinks he could get away with such a crime. He thinks that he is entitled to just go into the home of college students and take the lives of 4 innocent college students who didn't even know him. That's the thing that makes me so angry. I mean, one of many things that makes me so angry. There was no association between them. It wasn't even, like, it's always tragic. It's always tragic when anyone dies or is killed. But it wasn't even a situation of something gone wrong in a marriage or some kind of, like, family argument or something. Like, there was no correlation between the two of them. There is no reason why he should have been anywhere near that house. Like, point blank, period. It's not like that. There's no crazy husband or like whatever that it's like you can connect the dots and it's like, I see how this happened. It's unfortunate, but I see how this happened. This is like, what were you doing, dude? Like, you are such a loser that you obsessed over these people because they had a better life than you, apparently. You think you're so much better than them. You're jealous of the fact that they had friends and they had a life, and you decided to take that from them. Granted, we don't know that that's the exact motive, but I have a feeling it's something along those lines. I think it is entitlement, and it seems like the lack of respect for women, but also the desire to have a girlfriend, as has mentioned. I think he is just one of those people that resents women because none of them like him. For obvious reasons. I mean, maybe if he was normal. Maybe if he acted like a human being and not some kind of weirdo lizard inhuman person. I don't know, maybe he could have had a girlfriend, but you lost your chance. I genuinely think that that's a large motivator behind this is because he is such a loser and he just felt the need to take joy away from other people. Another thing that like just makes me unbelievably angry is how young they were. And I know obviously it's like a point of everyone says that I'm like they're so young. They were just starting their lives, but I feel like I have such a connection to this case because I personally have such a hard time wrapping my mind around that because I've lost quite a few of my peers throughout my life. Like, quite frankly, I think more than one normally would have by age 24. I mean, to various things like illness, suicide, the Astroworld tragedy. I constantly find myself thinking about, I'll say the two from the Astroworld Festival. They were two people who were very, very close to me at one point in my life. Two incredibly kind, amazing people. And I spent a lot of time with them when I was younger. And so I'm constantly thinking about them. I think about them on a weekly basis. And it baffles me as weeks and months and years go on. The fact that these people that I was growing up with and we were progressing through life at the same rate. We were doing kind of the same things for a while. And then, you know, everyone split off and did their own things once they kind of became an adult. But it's just so baffling to me that my life gets to continue and I get to have these experiences. You know, I get to eventually get married and have kids and, you know, one day retire and then have grandkids. Like, I get to continue on my life. I moved into starting my career, which they never had an opportunity to do. Anyway, my point being, I constantly think about those two on a weekly basis, and I genuinely still can't wrap my head around the fact that their life is just permanently paused, and I continue to grow and age and get to experience all these things that they never will. And I think because I am constantly hit with that feeling from the two people that I once was really close with, this case resonates with me in that same way, where I think about, I think I was the same age as Kaylee when this happened. And it makes me sick and baffles me to think about the fact that in that time, I've lived another almost 3 years, and those 4 have not. Like, but it really puts me in my place and humbles me when I think about how fragile life is, and unfortunately, there's people like Inmate 163214 who think that they're entitled to take that away from you. But yeah, I think like this case resonates with me so much because I see the parallels of like having lost people that I'm constantly thinking about how crazy it is that I would have never known sitting in art class with this one guy that one day I'd be living and he would not be. Like, you don't think that that's going to happen until you reach a certain point in life, maybe like 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. You don't think that you're going to have to, you don't think you're going to continue on life and other people not at the age of like 20. So I think because of that, this case really resonates with me, and I am constantly thinking about that. And I think because of all the things we hear about each of the victims, how great they were, how much fun they were, how much everyone around them loved them, and just seeing their faces plastered everywhere, it's like the fact that I can close my eyes and see all of their faces in my head, it feels almost like I know them at this point. It's so hard to imagine how these people who were having so much fun, who were becoming adults, going into the real world and living life, they don't get to do that anymore. That's it. They don't get to get married. They don't get to have kids. I think that that's the hardest thing for me to comprehend. I also have a hard time wrapping my head around the fact that it seems like they had the best day on the 12th. Like, I'm not a partier anymore. I need like a week of recovery after a party. I just can't do it anymore. So my first year when I first moved to LA, I had a grand time, and I look back fondly on all those memories and hearing about their day on the 12th, that they woke up, they went to this party, they came home, took a nap, they went to this party, and they came back and they discussed, and then to think that they had what I would consider to be such a fun day, like the type of day that I look back fondly on from my past. And I'm grateful that I had such fun in my young years, and it sounds like they had an amazing day. Like, I feel like I would have had so much fun if I had that day back then. And then to think that they just go to bed and that's it. Like, it's so crazy to me that they had such an amazing day and then it ends in an absolute nightmare. I don't know. That's another thing. It's just like, there's so many things. I feel like every true crime, it's so hard to comprehend certain things, but this, it just seems like thing after thing after thing that it hits you and you're like, how is this possible? And it somehow makes it even more tragic than it already is. So truly, like, I think about that on a regular basis, and it's like, it's sickening. It's disgusting. He is, I don't know, he's not human, truly. Anyway, so that leads me into my next thing, which is what was supposed to be trial. I know there are a lot of people who are disappointed in the plea deal. I know the Gonzalez family is disappointed in the plea deal. I since heard that apparently the Laramies, Maddie's stepfather and mother, who agreed to the plea deal because 3 out of the 4 agreed to the plea deal. I've since heard that the Laramies said that if they knew how badly Kaylee was beaten, that they wouldn't have agreed to the plea deal. So that makes me think that maybe they regret agreeing to that. However, I honestly think it was the best possible outcome for their mental health. And I know a lot of people will disagree with me. Here's one thing. I personally am against the death penalty. I mean, I respect anyone's opinions. I respect everyone's right to have their own opinion. But I personally am against the death penalty. I believe that we have no business choosing to end another person's life. I don't think we have any business making that decision, which is part of the reason why people like Inmate 163214 are in prison, because people have no right to be making that decision on behalf of someone else. Not to mention the fact that it technically costs us more in tax dollars with all the appeals and everything to get ready for actually going through with the death sentence than it does to just feed someone and give them prison housing for the rest of their life. Like, it's more costly to the taxpayers to put someone to death than it is to just give them life in prison. And I personally think that, in my mind, if they're in prison for the rest of their life, that seems like a tougher sentence to me because you can go crazy in there. Like, yeah, apparently these days you get tablets and TVs, which I don't really think is quite right. But regardless, at some point you go crazy when you're in a tiny little thing And even if you have electronics to keep you busy, that only goes so far. At some point, you're going to start going crazy. And I really do think that the death sentence is an easy way out compared to that. So, that being said, as someone who is against the death penalty, when they announced that he took a plea deal and would be serving life and no death penalty, I found myself being bummed. Again, as someone who does not believe the death penalty is right, I found myself being bummed because there is just something about that inhuman individual who makes me so sick. It actually makes me go against something that I very strongly believe in. So I was bummed for a second, but I since did research and I found out that there are people that have been on death row in Idaho since the 80s. That some of the family members of the victims of these people have passed, didn't get to see the person executed like they thought it would be, cathartic and give them final closure to see this person executed, and they passed before this guy did. So I guess currently there's stuff going on in Idaho that they're not actively executing people. So one, there is the chance that inmate 163214 would be on death row for years and years and years. And obviously he's much younger than the victims' families because he's about the same age where he could be a child of theirs. So there's a chance that he could be on death row for years and never get executed until after the families, maybe not all, but some have passed and they didn't get to see that. And it's I feel like waiting and waiting and waiting for that justice, it feels like you're in a holding pattern and they might not have ever been able to see it. Had he gotten that sentence, there's no guarantee that he would have actually gotten it in their lifetime. At least his life sentence is not one of those life sentences where they get up on parole in 20 years. His life sentence is he's in there. It is life sentence back to back to back to back. He's not going anywhere. He is in jail. And I personally think he will drive himself insane thinking about how badly he messed up, thinking about how stupid he is when he thinks that he was this genius the whole time. Now he's going to have lots of time to think about how stupid he is and drive himself absolutely insane. I think his smugness is going to wear off real fast, and I have a feeling the other prisoners are not going to take too kindly to him. I mean, even some of the worst look down on people who kill children. I mean, why wouldn't you? Unless you're an absolute monster, that should absolutely be condemned and looked down upon. So he's not going to have an easy time in there. I think he's going to have a nightmare of a time there. I truly do. And part of me thinks he is going to end up going out the way Jeffrey Dahmer did. I really do think at some point someone is going to take it upon themselves to take care of him. Everyone has the right to their own opinion. The families have the right to their own opinion. Everyone grieves in different ways. And I understand the Gonzalez family being so mad and angry at him. Again, as someone who is against the death penalty, I was shocked for a second when the realization hit me, but I was bummed hearing that was taken off the table. But also going through the trial, which I think is the biggest thing that I want to discuss here. Going with the trial, I was getting kind of worried that the defense would be able to create enough doubt in just one or two people that it would result in a mistrial or that he might get off. I mean, we've seen this before with O.J. Simpson. As much as you think you have solid, concrete evidence, the defense only has to poke a couple holes in your story to create enough reasonable doubt where one or two people just can't say he's guilty. While I think most of us would agree it is relatively impossible to think that he's not guilty, there are plenty of people out there who think it wasn't him, who think someone else could be involved. If you think someone else can be involved and a juror says, I can't say that he's guilty because I don't think he's the sole person who did it. Yeah, I think he was involved, but if he wasn't the sole person who did it, I can't say he did it by himself. They can't say that he's guilty, and then that messes up the whole thing. I truly think with the way that it sounded just from what we heard, how the defense was going, I think this would have been an absolutely nasty trial. I was a little bit worried that the defense would bring up enough random scenarios and garbage, and I was afraid that they were going to bring up things like they were college students drinking, the roommate issue that people have an issue with, which I went over in my last video, and I'm not going to rant about that again. It's ridiculous to me. They have no involvement in this, and they are victims as well. But the whole roommate debacle that people are discussing. Now the fact that these documents have come out and we found out that there were drugs involved a little bit with Ethan and Xana, the defense probably would have used that, like as if that's a reason, as if it makes it acceptable that happened. But that's what defense attorneys do. They use these things and make people feel less bad. They poke holes in the story. They use something that's completely unrelated and twist the story and say, well, but maybe because of this drug thing. And then someone's like, oh, you're right. And they're able to manipulate you into getting a not guilty verdict, getting a mistrial. It really felt like the defense was crafty enough and evil enough that was a possibility. And I was getting worried about that the more little things about the defense and their tactics were coming out before the trial. So with the plea deal, obviously there's no way around this. Like, it is what it is. He is in prison. Another thing is, a trial is hell for the family members. Rehashing all that, having the crime scene photos shoved in your face, being grilled on the stand by defense attorneys who try to twist your words, make you look bad. I mean, the fact that Dylan and Bethany would have had to go through all that, I'd been thinking about this for the longest time. I was preemptively feeling so bad for them that they were going to have to sit there on the stand, look him in the eyes while his defense attorney grilled them and questioned them and made them probably feel more guilty and more upset about the whole thing. As hurt and traumatized as I'm sure Dylan and Bethany are from the situation, I think the trial would have made it 10 times worse. At the end of the day, a trial is technically for the defendant, because every defendant, no matter if we think he's guilty beforehand or not, everybody has the right to a fair trial. That is our judicial system. Everyone has the right to have counsel. Everyone has the right to a fair trial, an impartial jury, and you are innocent until proven guilty. So yeah, while the past few years we've been like, that loser did it, he was innocent until proven guilty, because that is how our judicial system works. Trial is for the defendant to plead their case, and prove themselves to be innocent. Prove themselves to be not guilty of the crime they're being accused of. Instead of just tossing them in jail and being like, you did this is your sentence. They have the right to try and prove that they did not do it. And in that comes, again, the defense tugging at every little thing, shoving pictures of bodies and blood and things that you do not want to see. You don't want to see your child with their face bashed in or 50 stab wounds. They'll be shoving that in the victim's family faces the whole time, ripping them to shreds for no other reason than to try and get this heinous, sad excuse for a human being off. Try and let him get away with murdering 4 innocent college students. I really genuinely think getting this guilty verdict, having him plead guilty, say, yes, I did it, and being sent away for the rest of his life is the best possible outcome. And the families didn't have to sit through the defense questioning them, making their children who are dead seem like they deserved it or like they were bad people. I want to quick include a TikTok from one of my mutuals who shares her personal experience with her family having gone through a murder trial. I think that she put this the best possible way from, again, personal experience. Her username on TikTok is Casdam. She is a wonderful person and has the best stories, so definitely check out her TikTok. But this one, I think, is really important insight into the whole trial scenario.
Before you jump on that bandwagon and you start hating on the Idaho 4 prosecutor because it's coming out that he was giving murderers plea deals rather than making them go to trial for their crime, I just want to let you know that it's been about 30 years since my grandfather's murder trial ended and my mother still wakes up screaming all the time. 30 years since 2 people killed her father and only one of them was decent enough to take a plea deal. And yeah, he got a lighter sentence for it because it was the decent thing for him to do, the decent thing for his victim's family. And I know that was the decent thing to do because the other person did not do that. They rejected all of the plea deals, and knowing that capital punishment was on the table, they took it to trial and they wrote it all the way until the guilty conviction. And I'm sure that you're like, wow, you must be happy. You took it to trial, you got the guilty conviction, the maximum punishment that you wanted, and you got a fair trial. But a fair trial is not what you think it is. And I think that's why everybody's so mad at the prosecutor, because they're so angry and hurt that they want the maximum punishment, but they do not understand the consequences of going through the actual trial, because all of that evidence is available to both parties. It is not just the prosecution getting to examine the defense. The defense gets to build a case too, and their case does not have to be true. They get access to all of those crime scene photos. They can show your loved one face down in a puddle of blood. They don't care. They get access to everything. They want to cast doubt on all of the friends, the family, etc. of the victim. So they're going to dig into your past. They're going to bring all of that up. They also want to try to make the victim seem unworthy of justice. So they're going to dig into their past and see what kind of dirt they can bring up on them. There's a lot of vile things that get said in trials that you just can't forget. Things that you don't want to ever hear about your loved ones. I'm blessed. My mother did not drag her children to the trial with her, but she did attend that trial every single day. And believe me when I tell you that trauma gets carried on for generations, because although I did not attend the trial, I know why my mother was up screaming every single night. And it's been 30 years. I'm grown. I have children of my own. Recently, my teenage son went on vacation with my mother. I get a text at like 3 o'clock in the morning, grandma's screaming. And I'm like, yeah, she kind of just does that. You got to ignore it. She'll stop in a little bit. The next day, I get the same text. Grandma's screaming. Why does she do this? How am I supposed to tell my teenage son that the reason why grandma wakes up screaming in the middle of the night is because in the defense team's closing argument, they pulled out a giant poster board, they walked up to her, they flipped it around to reveal her deceased father. Mind you, my grandfather was shot point blank in the face with a hollow tip bullet. This means his brain exploded behind him. They put that in my mother's face and they say, "Do you really think little Stevie is capable of something this horrible?" Now, all because her little brother refused to take a plea deal, she gets to have that image burn into her brain. Every time she closes her eyes, that's the image that she gets to see. That defense attorney's poster board of her father with his head blown off. I don't know. I just feel like that's something to keep in mind when you're trying to criticize the prosecutor for his decision to give people plea deals over making them go to trial.
I feel like that explained it a lot better than I can, just because her family has that personal experience. Her mother has that trauma from having gone through a trial where the defense tried to paint a completely different picture from what actually happened. And I think for as traumatized as these families must be after all of this, including the bashing and the negativity they've already got from this case being so public, I really don't think they needed the defense trying to tear them to shreds and make their, again, dead children seem like horrible people and try and prop up their murderer. Absolutely, there is the possibility that they could have gotten a guilty verdict with the trial. There's a possibility they could have gotten the death penalty. But again, that doesn't mean that he would have been put to death during the lifetime of some of these family members, given Idaho's track record. The trial, if he's found guilty, doesn't guarantee, if he doesn't get the death penalty, that he gets the amount of time he should, because we frequently see people not getting the amount of time they should for their crime. Having the trial in itself is a risk due to the fact that it is so easy to just put enough doubt in one person's head that it messes the entire thing up. Again, I bring up OJ. It is so easy to get one person to say they can't convict him, and everything is out the window. Then you have to go through it again. Or maybe he just gets acquitted, which both are an absolute nightmare. And I think also with this, because the trial was going to be televised, I think that this also helps protect the privacy of all 4 of them a little bit, because everything would have been aired. I mean, everything has to be aired for a trial. You need every little bit of evidence, every little thing that happened. And I'm sure those families, if they really thought about it, don't want pictures of their kids' bodies all over the news for the world to see. And God, I hope that the police department does not ever release those in whenever they release the next set of documents, if they do. None of us need to see that. The family members don't need to see that. They should be locked away in a folder and kept there. None of those victims deserve to have the public see them in such a vulnerable state. That's my 2 cents. I understand that people disagree. I understand people have different opinions, but that's my 2 cents. That's my opinion. This is my video. This is my channel, giving my thoughts on this. Now that loser inmate 163214 is behind bars and will stay there for the rest of his pathetic life, I sincerely hope that the families can heal themselves, can start to get more closure on this, can take time to focus on themselves. Nothing will ever be the same. Nothing obviously will ever be able to bring them back. There's nothing that can be done to fix this for them. No amount of, justice or casseroles or internet hugs. Nothing can fix this. The only thing that would fix this is if their children were here. But I truly, truly hope that they can heal as much as possible and start to live a happy as possible new normal. As I said at the beginning, the point of me not using his name is because the focus should not be on him. The focus should be on the 4 beautiful, bright souls that were unjustly taken by, again, this inhuman loser. Every death, every murder is absolutely tragic, but this one, it really hits me extra hard. And I mean, like I said in the video, it's taken me so long to film part 1 and part 2 because I've had to keep taking breaks while filming this because all of these details are devastating. I personally have kind of a thick skin when it comes to things. I enjoy spooky things, horror movies. I watch a lot of true crime. I'm able to consume this content and it doesn't affect me too much. But truly, this case is one of the few that I can't stop thinking about, but I also struggle thinking and talking about it because it breaks my heart. I truly, truly hope that the families are able to regain some of their joy and cherish time with the family members that are still here and, do things in their honor. I know that some of them have made foundations and I think that is great. I think, remembering them and doing things in their honor will help keep them around and keep their memory alive. They will absolutely never be forgotten. I know I and many others send the families so, so much love and strength and hope that they are able to get through this. Saying this, I was going to end the video right here, but saying this has reminded me of one more thing that I do want to touch on that I forgot I was going to talk about a little bit earlier in my rant here. I have seen some negativity online involving the victim impact statements of Jeff Knodel and Ben Mogan. And that is one thing I do want to touch on because I think that is also horrendous and disgusting. I've seen people talking about how they were talking on the stand, their mannerisms, shaming them for the way they went up there and were talking about their daughters that they lost. I think it is absolutely sick that people are over here judging them, saying that they were clearly high, they were clearly on something, they were clearly drunk. First of all, you have no business accusing anyone of that, but even if they were, who cares? Their daughters are dead. Their daughters were brutally murdered by this monster. Who cares what they do to help them get through probably one of the hardest days of their life, having to go up and speak about their daughters to this monster? If they were on something or drunk or whatever, that is none of your business. They are grown adults, and if they choose to do that to help them through such a difficult and tough situation, you don't get to judge them. Until you are in that exact position, you have absolutely no say about how they choose to handle things. That being said, We don't even know if that's true. We know that Ben has struggled with issues in the past, and it is heartbreaking to find out that shortly before the murders took place, Maddie was talking about how proud she was of him and his recovery and how far he's come. And it's devastating to think about the fact that he has gone through such a tragedy after having struggled. It's not my business to speculate on whether or not he got back into things after that. It's not my business, nor do I, again, care how one chooses to manage a horrible tragedy like this. It breaks my heart to think that Maddie was so proud of him for doing so well, and then he dealt with such a horrible tragedy like this. I'm sure that put a strain on him. Regardless of whether he stayed on the path of sobriety or not, I am personally so incredibly proud the fact that he was able to go up on the stand and speak and be so vulnerable and share how much he loved Maddie with everyone. You can tell that he loves her so much, and the fact that he lost his one and only daughter is devastating. So regardless, I send him so much love and support. I hope he's doing okay, and anyone out there who is judging him, sending negativity, talking about his mannerisms as he was talking about her, you are absolutely disgusting. That is not acceptable. He is a grieving father. He has experienced one of the worst things, probably the worst thing a person can experience. So he does not deserve a single second of judgment. Xana's father, in his victim impact statements, he mentioned that night that he was drunk and he was going to drive to the house that night because Xana wasn't feeling well. He said that Xana told him, no, don't drive drunk. It's okay. Stay where you are. And he listened to her. I mean, yes, I'm a big proponent of not driving drunk. I have a rule for myself. If I have even one glass of wine, I do not drive. I am that intense about that rule. I take drinking and driving very seriously, or not drinking and driving very seriously. So yes, that was absolutely the right decision to not drink and drive. However, it is sad to think about what could have happened or what could have been prevented had he been there, had he went to the house that night. And I'm sure he feels an immense amount of guilt from that. I mean, all of the what ifs. Everything's always a what if when you're in that situation. So the fact that he specifically mentioned that and shared that thing that I'm sure probably pops into his head on a daily basis was incredibly brave and vulnerable of him. And for people to say that he sounded like he was on something, again, if he is, that is none of our business. He is a grown man who is going through a very difficult time. Both of their statements were incredibly vulnerable and heartbreaking to hear. And I specifically wanted to bring that up, that people are shaming them and making accusations. And it's taking away from the entire point of why they went up there, is to share the love that they had for their daughters who were brutally ripped from them. And people just ignore that and go and bash them and act as if they were not victims of this horrible crime. So I wanted to bring that up because I think it is disgusting, and more these days I am horrified by how people feel so okay with sitting behind their computer screens and typing out some negative message to someone they don't even know. They sit there behind that screen, and that's okay. I can be as rude as I want because no one can come for me because I am right here on my couch and no one can touch me from here. That doesn't make it okay. Your words still have an effect. Your words still hurt. And these people are already hurting. That is my final thing. Doesn't really have anything to do with the files we've read today, but I have seen things and I have been mad. So I'll end off on that note. If you sat here and listened to my whole analysis and my rants about things, love you. I appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in. This case really, really sits with me. So I thought if I am reading through these files, might as well share it with you guys, give my insights. Now that the case is over, now that inmate 163214 is locked up and hopefully has the worst time of his life behind bars. I really hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys found this interesting. I hope you guys enjoyed really isn't the right word, but I guess I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please, please, please send all of your thoughts of love and healing towards the family's direction, or keep them in your thoughts, and I'm sure most of you already are. They need so much of it. Please be respectful towards the families, the victims, the roommates, Xana and Maddie's fathers. Please be respectful. If you are not, your comments will be deleted and you will be blocked. I'm not messing around. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up. I will pop a couple video suggestions on the screen here for you. If you are new to my channel, I typically talk about spooky ghost stuff, dabble in true crime a little bit, but there'll be a couple video suggestions for you to check out another video after this finishes. Please click the subscribe button down below if you haven't already, and turn on post notifications so you would never miss a video. I post every Sunday and most Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 4 p.m. Central Time. Again, thank you so much for watching. Stay safe and be kind, and I will see you next video. Bye.